everybody. Recording live from somewhere.
It's time. It is time for football. Football is back. Totem Pole Nation. Lambeau Coach Bald. Football is back. We got college football tonight, and we got NFL football next Thursday, September 5th. The Baltimore Ravens versus the Kansas City Chiefs. 2024 fantasy football. The best plays that you can't miss. The best players that will make an impact on this upcoming NFL season and this upcoming football season for the 2024. Coach Bald, how you feeling? Because football is finally back.
Woo! I'm a little winded right now because I'm excited. We got some college football games tonight. And like you said, 7 days away from kickoff, the Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champions, Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes versus the Baltimore Ravens, King Henry, Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, Andy Reid. Let's freaking do this. I'm fired up, my man. I'm so fired up. Fantasy football season. Hey, this is the time that you win right here. It's the draft. It's not the first couple picks because they're going to be studs. It's those last couple of picks, those hidden gems. You know, it's always about that third-year receiver is what they're saying. You know, the third-year receiver, usually one of them blows up into that top five, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Running backs, we got running backs galore. Quarterbacks, do not pick your quarterback in the first 4 rounds. Don't do it. Don't jump on that, all right? Build the outside in. You're going to get a good quarterback. There's plenty to go. Coach Lambeau, what do you got going on, man? You looking good in the big game. Where's our boy Gator at? Because it's Miami and the Florida Gators this week. What a game that's going to be.
Well, we'll get into that later into the show, but we got to get started with the NFL fantasy football. I know some of you have already started your fantasy, and some of you are starting before Labor Day weekend. But we're going to start with the AFC East. Coach Ball, we're going to start with your team, the Buffalo Bills. What players are going to make an impact on fantasy football? You got to be really careful because they did lost a lot of guys on defense. They lost Stephon Diggs. He got traded to the Texans. Who are the key guys on fantasy that you should pick for the Buffalo Bills? And should you pick their defense under Sean McDermott? It's been successful. It's been legitimate, but they can't get over the hump past the divisional round. So what are the players for the Buffalo Bills that you would recommend on everyone's fantasy team that is first starting out or that has been starting out for a very long time?
Right. I think the guy that's going to have probably the most value is going to be the running back. You know, when you look at a running back, you're looking at James Cook. You know, he's a dual threat. He's a smaller guy, 5'11", 190 out of the University of Georgia. I believe he's going into his third year. And like I said, those third-year players, they tend to blow up. That's an explosive offense. You know, you got a great quarterback, and the weapons that are around him, he's going to make them famous. Now, a guy that I think is really under the radar is Khalil Shakur. I don't think they would have let Diggs leave if they didn't have some confidence in him. If you look at the last several games of the season, he really took over, had better numbers than Diggs, and he's another guy that I believe is going into his third year. We talk about those third-year players. You know, you got a couple years under the belt. You know the system. He's definitely one I think that's going to step up. They have 2 good tight ends, man. I love Knox, and Kincaid was definitely a threat down the stretch. He can stretch the field. Big target, the 6'4", 240 out of the University of Utah. This will be his second season. Those are the guys that I would definitely pinpoint on that team. There's some boom or bust guys, man. The Curtis Samuel, he did not do a lot in preseason, but he's the type of guy that they could put him in motion, do the jet sweep with them. He could be a terror out of the backfield and definitely be a nightmare when it comes to fantasy football, just because of he could catch it. He can run it. They can do the jet sweep with them. And I think he's a playmaker that they got at a good rate. They got a lot of open targets. You lost Gabe Davis. You lost Diggs. They're two big stud receivers. So there's some footballs to go around. They're a team where all of those guys I just mentioned are guys that are going to be there late. I don't know I really don't know where they're projecting Cook. I would say he's probably 5th, 6th round, somewhere like that. But yeah, he's a guy that might be there. People want to jump up and get a quarterback. I think Cooks could be a guy that is a stud. Also, they drafted a rookie, Ray Davis, out of the University of Kentucky. And he is a very explosive guy. He could be a guy under the radar. Frank Gore, I believe, is a backup there. I believe he's still on the squad or maybe practice squad. He could be a guy in the future. He had over 100 yards rushing, I believe, the last preseason game. So those are the guys for the Buffalo Bills that I would definitely target. How about yourself, man? I know that you're anti-Buffalo. You're a New England Patriots. The team with how many Super Bowls? 6 Super Bowls?
6.
Wow.
6 Super Bowls.
And,
we got a comment. LeBear, thank you for tuning in to Total Pole Nation. LeBear says, yo, LeBear, how you doing in Total Pole Nation? We appreciate you for coming on here. Faith, family, football, and the future content creation. LeBear, let us know how your day was. In Total Pole Nation, we are just getting started. So,
Yeah.
I agree with you when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. You're losing a lot of guys on defense and offense. But I think Buffalo's going to have a different identity. They're going to have a different identity on offense. They fired the offensive coordinator last year. I think Joe Brady is still the offensive coordinator, if I'm correct. Former, LSU. He was at LSU with Joe Burrow, and he was at Carolina, and then, he came to Buffalo. So I think they'll have a different format. I still think the Buffalo Bills will somewhat win the AFC East. But I agree with you when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. We just have to wait and see. They do play Arizona week 1. I think that could be a little bit tough just because you're replacing a new defense. You're replacing a new offense as well. Have a lot of new wide receivers. Running back position, they got 2 great tight ends, but we just got to figure out what is the Buffalo Bills' identity. Now, on to the next team. We're going to switch teams. So I'm going to start with the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, right? I didn't pick Aaron Rodgers in the 4th round or the 1st round. I picked him probably 8th or 9th. Aaron Rodgers is a gunslinger. Here's my issue. They have a lot of weapons. You can say Garrett Wilson. You got Mike Williams. The defense, you could pick the Jets defense on fantasy as well because, the Jets defense and Jeff Ulrich, the defensive coordinator, they know how to stop guys. Their issue is just the offense. That's their issue. Their running back is going to be a main one. Aaron Rodgers could be a main one. Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner on the defensive side. They're going to have elite corners, elite safeties. I think you got C.J. Mosley at the linebacker spot as well. I know you can't pick defensive players or certain linebackers in the situation, but my only problem with the Jets is that offensive line. So for the Jets, they got a lot of talent. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to spread the ball out a lot. They got a great tight end as well. So you could pick between Aaron Rodgers, their running back. You could pick what's his face? Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson. The running backs, they got everybody. It just comes down to what the offensive line, and definitely the number one. Would you pick Aaron Rodgers or the Jets defense on your fantasy? Dude, give me the Jets defense because they're going to be locked and loaded. Their offense, everybody has to come together and be on the same page. We do have comments. CI says my league has pick trades, and I have 2 second-rounders and 4 third-rounders. Who do you recommend taking, Coach Bald?
Yeah, that second round, it usually, in the first round, either it goes heavy wide receiver or heavy running back. I always love those back-to-back picks because, man, you can really load up on some serious talent there. And I think you just look for guys to fall. The guy you mentioned, man, that I like the most on this Jets football team is Garrett Wilson. Okay, he's a third-year receiver. We just said it. Those third-year guys. If he somehow creeps to that spot, or if you can get a Breece Hall, I kind of see this New York Jets football team when when Tom Brady came here. What they did is they pounded the rock, man. It was Leonard Fournette, and then he would beat you with, Mike Evans. He'd beat you with Godwin. That's what I see coming out of the same. If you look at the Jets, they're kind of built the same. You got two big receivers there, Wilson and Williams, and then that running back, man, he was a monster for a pretty bad football team last year. So I see him having a monster season. If you could get both of those guys for the Jets, if you could get a Breece Hall and you could get a Garrett Wilson in that second round, I think you might be in a good spot, because I see them doing a lot of quick passes, till Aaron Rodgers is completely 100%. I know he's had, 11 months to get ready for this, but you want to build a quarterback's confidence, and, you start on the ground, and, they've got some studs up there up front, in the ground game with Morgan Moses, Richmond, Virginia. And you got, I believe, Tyron Smith, the former Dallas Cowboy. He's finally healthy. So that's what I would look for when I'm looking for the Jets. That's pretty cool about those trades. And 4 third-rounders, holy cow. Who did you get rid of, CL, to do that? And, yeah, the PPR value that you'll get with a Breece Hall, he can definitely catch the ball out of the backfield and make plays as well.
Sankey OK says you should watch Real Football Soccer. And CI says 0.5 PPR.
Yep, half a point per reception. Yeah, I like that.
So next team, we go to the Miami Dolphins. Coach Bald, how do you feel about the Miami Dolphins? We know we talk about Tua and those 2 wide receivers. Are there any other guys? I know you're going to mention them, but are there any other key guys for the Miami Dolphins? Because they're not successful in January. They can't play in cold weather. And last year, and I know it's a different year, but as we've shown, as evidence, Tua is the 3rd highest paid quarterback. Not only he's the 3rd highest paid quarterback, the Brian Flores situation came out, and Mike McDaniel, he's great. He's a great offensive mind, came from San Francisco under the Kyle Shanahan tree. But their defense gets a lot of injuries. They lost a defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, things with the Philadelphia Eagles. So what is the Miami Dolphins' identity, and who are you going to pick with the Miami Dolphins? Because, a lot of teams, like you said, they take wide receivers, running backs in the first round. And like I said, they got a stud on the offensive side. But in Mike McDaniel's 3rd year in their system, they're going to have to install a tight end, which meaning the tight end's going to have to get the ball more. So what are your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, they got, Jonnu Hill. I believe they got him. They've got Durham Smythe out of Notre Dame. That he hasn't developed a tight end since he's been there, and that's been, kind of frustrating for them. They're going to have to score, like you said. They've got some guys. They've got some guys starting the season that are not going to be playing. The big defensive lineman they got from the Broncos. I think when you're looking for a receiver, Jalen Waddle is going to be a guy that he signed a big contract with those guys. He'd be one that I could definitely see, maybe taking a flyer on, getting him, 6th, 7th round or something like that. The running back position is going to be key for them, because you had Raheem Mostert, and I mean, he had a monster season. I think close to 20 touchdowns. But then you had Devon Chain, who all he did was move the chains. I think the guy averaged close to 7-8 yards a touch. Just a dynamic back out of Texas A&M. Smaller guy, 5'9", about 190 pounds, but just electrifying when he gets the ball. I think you're going to see them scheme up to where you get your best players, the rock in your hands. And I know that Mostert is not, I know he's in his 30s, but he was a 49er for several years. He battled some injuries, so he's got a little bit more wear and tear on his body than others. And yeah, man, Tua, I think Tua is definitely a guy that you could get late in drafts and he will make a big impact for you. Now, when you think about that defense, they got some studs in the secondary, you know, Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland. Those are some good players on the back end. But, you know, with I think on the front end with let me see, who's the defensive lineman I'm thinking about? Defensive end.
Phillips?
Bradley
Chubb.
Chubb. Bradley Chubb. They're a different animal with him in there. He was the University of North Carolina, 6'4", 275, rock star when he was at the Broncos, but he has had to battle some injuries. Another guy that you definitely do not want on your team would be Odell Beckham Jr. Do not draft him. He's not going to several games, but once he does come back, I think he could be a guy that could have a huge impact on the success of a Tyreek Hill, a Waddle, and whoever they do have at that tight end spot. Juno Smith is probably who I'm thinking, you know, at the tight end.
What about Christian Watkins?
Watkins, I thought
Christian Wilkins, my bad. Wilkins.
He got traded. I believe he got traded. Yeah, he is no longer on the Dolphins, I believe. Let me see here. Yeah, because great defensive lineman, right? Yeah, I believe he's
Clemson.
Think of who he plays for.
I think he still plays there.
Is he still there?
No, he plays for the Las Vegas Raiders now. He played with the Raiders. He got traded to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Upgrade. That's a great upgrade. That's a thing that I like what the Raiders did in the offseason is, you know, you improve your front, you get a big tight end like they got out of Georgia. But yeah, he's the 6'4", 310 out of Clemson. He is a Raider.
So, we got comments. CI says, I was 0-6 and basically traded my whole team. I picked up Nakua and Kyron Williams because I am a Rams fan and ended up trading them at the deadline for a bunch of picks. Christopher Motley, thank you for tuning in and commenting. Clemson, ACC champions, count on it. Christian Wilkins, no, he's still there. Negan the Savior says Broncos winning the Super Bowl with Big Dick Knicks. And Christopher Motley says, wow, what the hell, when did that happen? I think that happened like 2-3 weeks ago. That happened probably during the offseason, but he is a Las Vegas Raider. So thank you for the comments. This is for all of you here on Total Pole Nation that are commenting. We love you and we appreciate you.
Who do we got? Next up, big fella.
Next team that we got is the New England Patriots, the AFC East. That wraps up the AFC East. We're going to go by division so that everybody can catch up and be on the same page. The New England Patriots started Jacoby Brissett over Drake May. Gerard Mayo, you are smart, a smart man. You've been around Bill Belichick for years. You've been a former player as a linebacker. You've been a former defensive coach for a long time. And in the contract clause of Bill Belichick, it says that Gerard Mayo will be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. Now, I know the Patriots don't have a lot of sexy players on fantasy-wise. I think, to me, the best player is probably a running back. I would say Ramondre Stevenson is a dog. He did get a 4-year extension. And I know Ezekiel Elliott had the leading rushing and touchdown for the Patriots, but he is back with the Dallas Cowboys. I think you're talking about running backs in fantasy football. I think the Patriots, my team, the New England Patriots, under new ownership, same ownership, but under a new head coach. You got Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator. You got Scott Peters, the O-line coach. They're gonna develop a system. They're gonna run the football. That's what they're gonna do. They're gonna throw it. I think they're gonna be old school. They're gonna run this. I think Ramondre Stevenson is gonna be the best player on the New England Patriots. Also, if you're looking for a wide receiver, because we're talking about first to 6 rounds, you don't want to get a quarterback. Jacoby Brissett is not a quarterback that you really want to get. Now, we don't know how well he's going to play, but he's not going to get you fancy numbers. You want fancy numbers and stats. He's not going to give you those fantasy numbers and stats. Let's just be honest. I still think the Patriots somehow do not pick in the top 5, But if you're talking fantasy, you're talking numbers, Jacoby Brissett is not going to get you those numbers because I don't know how many times you're going to throw the ball. We're going to be balanced. We're going to be equal. Wide receiver-wise, I think they got a lot of great wide receivers. You got Kendrick Bourne. You got Javon Baker. I mean, they got some talent on the wide receiver side. I will also pick the Patriots defense. Their defense is going to be legit and efficient. Despite them trading Matt Judon away from for a third pick to the Atlanta Falcons, you still got Christian Gonzalez, the corner. You still got a great defensive line, Devon Gucci. You still got a great solid. I know the retirement of the McCourty brothers. It helps a lot. Doesn't help a lot. We'll have to see. And they play a tough Cincinnati Bengals team in Week 1. Coach Ball, how do you feel about the New England Patriots? Should you draft anybody on fantasy for the New England Patriots?
I think the guy that you get value from is that running back, like you just named, man. Stevenson, he's a monster. They're back up to him, Antonio Gibson. He was a Washington Redskin. I don't think the Redskins or the Commodores, comedians, whatever you want to call themselves these days, I don't think they used him well. Now he's in a system where they like to use the running back not only to run, but out of the backfield. He could be a guy, if Stevenson goes down, step up in the role and get you some good touches and some good value. Wide receiver-wise, I believe is he starting off injured? Is he starting the season off? Okay. He
might be, but we'll wait. You still got 2 weeks.
Right. Your guy, Jalen Polk. He is a guy I think in the long run is going to be a stud. 6'2", 203 out of the University of Washington. You come from a pedigree that has, gone to the national championship. And that's what their staff has always done. They've always kind of drafted guys that won. And he could be a guy that I could see could be a sneaky pickup, free agency that flies under the radar. Tight end play, man, back in the day, they didn't have any receivers. They got rid of Moss. Well, all of a sudden, all you heard was Gronk and Hernandez. They got two good they got two good tight ends that can catch. Austin Hopper out of Stanford, 6'4", 250, and Hunter Henry, 6'5", 250 out of Arkansas. You got two good stud ends. But like I have to agree with you. I think their strengths are on the defensive side. You got Jonathan Jones at corner. You got Jabril Peppers there in the safety area. Kyle Duggar, another bad safety, another big stout safety. And then, like you said, man, your guy Gonzalez coming back. He should be a lockdown here his second year, battled through injury and everything. But I think there could be some serious value to that defense if they can get a good identity early. Ground and pound kind of football, get the tight ends involved, and let Jalen Polk get acclimated and used to beating people on the outside. Yeah,
we got a comment. Lopo Prod
take over.
Lopo Prod says Miami is going to lose on Saturday. Well, we'll see about that. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit of college ball towards the end of the show once we get through all of the fantasy picks. We still got 28 more teams to go. We're going to AFC North. We'll start off with the Baltimore Harbaugh. Lamar Jackson. They play Week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of talk about last year. We should have beat them. We had this. Look, your fantasy is going to be great. Number 1, Justin Tucker. Now, this year I wasn't able to snatch it, but Justin Tucker is going to give you some numbers. Justin Tucker is the best kicker in the NFL. So if you need a solid kicker, you can get Justin Tucker. Also, you can get Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Wide receiver, you don't really have a main number 1 wide receiver. I mean, you got Zay Flowers. I mean, that's maybe you pick them. But, Baltimore is going to be based off running the football. King Henry, Derrick Henry, former Alabama running back, EA Sports Electronic Arts, Madden NFL 25, former Tennessee Titan, and now a Baltimore Raven. You got the offensive coordinator in Todd Monken, a former Georgia offensive coordinator who had a national championship. So their identity is going to be running the ball. You also have Mark Andrews on the end as well. Now, they lost a defensive coordinator. Mac McDonald is not the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, but their defense is still going to be legit. They're still going to have a great, legit defense at the end of the day. But your top fantasy picks for the Baltimore Ravens, they are the best regular season team in the AFC. We know how well they do in the regular season. But when it comes to the playoffs, can Lamar Jackson complete a pass on 3rd and 7? Can he complete a pass on 3rd and 3? That's what it's going to come down to when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens. Coach Ball, how do you feel about the Baltimore Ravens? They're going to week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Is their Super Bowl window closing?
I believe that they have the next 2 to 3 years where they really need to make that push. Mentioning players fantasy wise, man, I got to think of Mark Andrews, the big tight end. When he's in there, he's one of the best, in the game. And he's definitely a guy that he targets. But his backup, when he went down, Isaiah Likely, he's a guy that you do not draft him, but always have him in the back of your mind. If your stud tight end does go down, or if Andrew goes down, Likely all of a sudden becomes a top tier target. I look for Zay Flowers to have a big comeback year. He had a humongous fumble right in the end zone, and I'm sure that that's been crushing him all season, and that's got to be what's motivating him. And man, I like the big comebacks, you know what I mean? So I would like to see him, have a big bounce back year. But yeah, man, you mentioned it, Derrick Henry. That guy is going to get some monster touches this season. Backing him up is Justice Hill out of Oklahoma State. I believe Kenton Mitchell will be starting the season on the reserve. So it's going to be a few games before we get to see him out of East Carolina. But yeah, Derrick Henry, and I don't think you can go wrong with Lamar. I think Lamar is probably going to get you close to 10, probably rushing touchdowns this year. They're going to be so dialed in on Henry that, that little fake bootleg, man, they're going to bring the bootleg back. They're going to make the bootleg sexy again. Heck yeah, man, we're going old school with it. But yeah, Baltimore Ravens, and you got to include that defense. I mean, Raquan Smith, when he got traded from the Chicago Bears, he just brought such a different mindset to them, man. Those guys were already savages, but man, he just upgraded. Kyle Hamilton coming back, being healthy, 6'4", 225 pound safety that can run like a corner. That's such a clutch guy to have. You could have him cover tight ends. You got Marlon Humphrey locked down on the outside out of Alabama. So they do have stars all over the place. And like you mentioned, the first guy, man, Justin Tucker is the only kicker that you can get. And then when he goes on the bye week, you don't get rid of him. Maybe you don't play a kicker, or you just pick up a backup kicker for that week. But Justin Tucker, that guy can boom them from outside of 50. And that's big time points if you hit 3 or 4 50-yard plus field goals. So I like where you're going with that. That division is going to be tough, man. I definitely see them and the Cincinnati Bengals slugging it out there. And, the Cleveland Browns, I mean, they were really the team to beat early. And, Flacco just couldn't get it done in a playoff season. But, yeah, man, I love talking about this division. What do you got next? Who you got next, Coach?
We got some comments. So Kipton Divine says, yo, can I get a shout out? Shout out to Kipton Divine. Thank you for tuning in to Total Pole Nation. Aaron Curtis says, Henry's production won't be significant. Thank you for your comment, Aaron Curtis. Thank you to all the comments here at Total Pole Nation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tap that 3 hearts on the side. Don't forget to like, comment, and spam. Like I said, Total Pole Nation is about faith, family, football, and the future of content creation. We believe there should be big-time live streamers, big-time YouTubers, and big-time content creators. For members and subscribers of Total Pole Nation, we are going to help you achieve your dreams. Erwin Curtis says, average career of a running back is 4 years. Henry has been around for 8 years. Yes. Also, if you want to bring up running backs, you can bring up Frank Gore's been around longer than 8 years. Adrian Peterson. I mean, there's some running backs that have been around for a while. So, Erwin Curtis, thank you for the comment. Coach Ball, the next team will be the Cleveland Browns. Or excuse me, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals, you can't talk about Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow, right? Joe Burrow could be in your fantasy. Jamar Chase, I think they got a great running back. I think their defense has been very solid. Now, Jamar Chase is questionable to play week 1 against the Patriots. The number 1 receiver, he's probably going to get paid sometime soon. As you know, Justin Jefferson set the market. Then CeeDee Lamb was number 2. And then you had somebody else at A.J. Brown, number 3. So if you're talking about Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, I mean, that is the heart and soul of the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, remember that year where at 2021 or 2020, they could have drafted an offensive lineman, but they chose to go with the teammate from LSU, which is Jamar Chase. So I think both of those guys on fantasy will be great. I wouldn't pick the running back just because what is the Cincinnati Bengals identity? Sometimes they run the ball well, sometimes they don't run the ball very well. And the offensive line is kind of mixing pieces, but also I think the reason why they made it so far in the playoffs is because we underrate the Cincinnati Bengals defense. The Cincinnati Bengals defense under Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, the defense has stepped up in the playoffs. So when I look at, like I said, it's a tough AFC North. The Cincinnati Bengals may not start off very hot, but towards the end of the season, they're going to pick it up. And like I said, the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be a threat to the Kansas City Chiefs to stop them from a 3-peat. They're not winning the Super Bowl again this year because I think the Bengals are going to be one of the threats to the Kansas City Chiefs. And like I said, they already beat them at Arrowhead Stadium. I think if Joe Burrow stays healthy fully to the way, do not be surprised if the Cincinnati Bengals make it to the AFC Championship game. Coach Ball, what other players do you want to pick besides Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase for 2024 fantasy football for the Cincinnati Bengals?
Man, I tell you what, the thing that you can't draft these guys in fantasy football, but the thing that makes the biggest sense to me and the guys that are going to make this team successful are you got the 6'8", 370-pound Trent Brown at right tackle. Okay. And then on the left side, the left tackle, you got Zeus Jr., the 6'8", 345-pound Orlando Brown. That right there tells me that they want to make sure Joey Burrow is in good hands and keeps his jersey clean. You got two of the biggest, baddest dudes, protecting the blind side and the front side. So I love that part. And when you got guys that big, it's definitely going to help, keep that pocket clean. Jamar Chase, I'm telling you, that guy, hopefully those guys can get signed, get him happy before you draft, and he's going to be good because these question marks it's kind of a red flag. I get worried when I see stuff like that. But, Chase is definitely, if you can get both of those two, that's a lethal combo if he plays and does what he's supposed to. T. Higgins is a guy. Big wide receiver, 6'4", 220. I believe he's going into his 4th or 5th season. But at 25, 26 years old, he is a dynamic bookend to a Chase. This is a big guy that is a big target. And I know that him and Burrow have probably connected a lot since Chase hasn't been there all offseason. Another thing I like this offseason is they got former Miami Dolphin, former Patriot Mike Gesicki, I believe. Big tight end out of Penn State, 6'6", 250. I think he's going to be a good added value. I always thought of him more as a big wide receiver. He didn't seem like the blocking style of a tight end. So he's another one that I would definitely keep on my radar. But one of the last picks, if you haven't picked a tight end, people don't give the tight end position a whole lot of respect. It's one of those where guys really fly under the radar, unless you have a Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is a guy that's been picked in the first round, probably the last 3 seasons, and he's got that big name. And, man, he just signed a humongous contract with his brother for their podcast. 3 years, $100 million. Whew, wow. Guys, we'll take a lot less if you want to buy our podcast. We are available here at Totem Pole Nation. But, man, that's what I kind of look for out of that Bengals. As far as defense, I love Hendrickson, the defensive end out of FAU. He's a big stud that can get a lot of push, and he's just great against the run game as well. But, yeah, that's kind of my insight on the Cincinnati Bengals. Who do we got? Comments here. Gore was in almost every team. That's why. Oprah says hi. Edwin Curtis, until Burrow plays at least one game, I wouldn't touch him.
Because Troy Taylor did say that Joe Burrow is one injury away from never playing football ever again.
Cool. Tua as well.
Next team is the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski has done a great job, by the way. He's done a great job with the Cleveland Browns. You got Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator. Don't pick Deshaun Watson, okay? The man has not played in like 2-3 years. He's hurt. Look, Nick Chubb is probably going to be out for a couple weeks too, right? So who do you pick, okay? Amari Cooper. You pick Amari Cooper in your fantasy. Amari Cooper was the best wide receiver on the team last year. Amari Cooper. The Dallas Cowboys, okay? The Dallas Cowboys traded him for a 5th-round pick. 5th-round pick. And this man is going off. Look, the Browns defense is great to pick. Amari Cooper is great. You still got great tight end. I think you got Austin Hooper and David Njoku. But they don't really throw the ball to the tight ends like that. They're more of a running team. But it's going to be tough for the Cleveland Browns to pick them in fantasy because you don't know what Deshaun Watson is going to bring. You can't pick Nick Chubb till he gets off of injury because he's going to be hurt for the first couple games. And you got Amari Cooper. But what type of Deshaun Watson are you going to see? I don't think you're ever going to see the Deshaun Watson, the Houston Texans version ever again. I don't think you're ever going to see that. So you pick Amari Cooper. I think that's fine. I just think they guaranteed Deshaun Watson too much money. $230 million guaranteed just for the man to not have played a single snap, or you barely played a game or whatever yet. So, Coach Ball, how do you feel about the Cleveland Browns? Like I said, despite all of that, Kevin Stefanski needs to be given a lot of credit for what he's done. Got rid of Baker Mayfield. You got Deshaun Watson. You took the team to the playoffs with 5 multiple quarterbacks because you had an efficient defense and an efficient run game. How do you feel about the Cleveland Browns? Would you draft anybody in fantasy? It's not too much besides the Cleveland Browns defense with Myles Garrett and whoever. Is there anybody that you want to draft from the Cleveland Browns in 2024 fantasy football?
Yeah, like you said, man, it starts at that quarterback spot. And, I mean, it's a huge question mark. Like you said, Watson hasn't done anything since the allegations, since he was in Houston. That seems like 3-4 seasons ago. The guy I like, though, man, I'm gonna tell you, he has the best catchphrases. Is Jameis Winston, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, eating dubs. Let's go. I want some of Jameis Winston. If Jameis Winston is our starting quarterback, I got these guys going playoffs, man. He's just a gunslinger. And he's just out of control, and you need that chaos when you're leading guys into a chaotic battle. But, also this offseason, they picked up Tyler Huntley, who he won some games for the Baltimore Ravens, man. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see him. DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they were high on him at UCLA. He could be a guy that gets in there as well. A lot of question marks, man. Jerome Ford, he's got to step up, with Chubb being out. And he had a pretty good season when Chubb went down. Chubb would be a guy that I would definitely take a flyer on if you could get him in round 10 or after. You know what I mean? If he's still sitting there after week 4, they're going to rev him up, and he's going to be ready. That guy, he is a workout machine, and he's just driven. He's just a driven player. They got Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos. He could be a guy that kind of helps stretch that field a little bit. Elijah Moore, I remember they got him from the Jets. He didn't do a whole lot coming from the Jets, but those two guys I just mentioned, they're right around the 3-year, 4-year guys. I wouldn't be surprised if Moore didn't have more of an impact because he's been in the system for a while. And the guy's electric, man. The guy, he could turn a 5-yard out into a 50-yard touchdown really quick. But, yeah, Cooper, he's definitely a guy you target. Seems like anybody he plays for, he's going to make some plays. And how do you say it, David?
Njoku.
Njoku could be a guy that really steps up. He's just a freak of nature, at 6'4", 245 pounds. I mean, the guy can stretch the field. He runs like a big wide receiver. And yeah, man, I remember last season. I don't know what happened, but he burned his face and he came out there with a mask on, and he was a warrior out there. And I like that kind of stuff. And the Cleveland Browns, the one thing about them is, they're going to play some defense, arguably the best defensive player in the league, with Myles Garrett. You got Denzel Ward on the back end. That offensive line is stout, man. Joel Bittino, I believe, the offensive guard. And you got Wyatt Teller, guard out of Virginia Tech. Yeah, man, they've got some studs on both sides of the front. I like Zadarius Smith. They got him from I believe they got him from the Green Bay Packers. They have some studs up front on both sides of the ball. So that's where I think it keeps them in these games. But yeah, they have to stick with a quarterback and let him run with it. But I'll be honest, man, I would not be surprised if Watson crapped the bed and they didn't give it to Winston, and Winston just kind of take the ball and run, man. Winston, I could easily see him being a guy that, has a big comeback like Geno Smith did a little later in his career, Baker Mayfield. Every year you're seeing a guy kind of come from, out of nowhere or finally get to a right place. This could be Jameis Winston's spot right here if Watson is not the man. But that's my 2 cents on the Cleveland Browns. And yeah, man, if Watson can ever, be who he once was, when he won the Natty here in Tampa Bay for the Clemson Tigers when they beat the University of Alabama, if he can ever be that guy again, then Cleveland could definitely be a team to beat in the North. But I'm like you. I don't see it, but I love the comeback stories. DCL, totem pole. Hey, I'm with you, Edwin Curtis. Watson will be a bust. Worst signing in NFL history. I'm saying that from the land.
DCL says totem pole nation. DCL, thank you for tuning in. This is how we do.
Totem pole. 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 Totem pole.
That is Totem Pole Nation. DCL, thank you for tuning in. DCL, we appreciate you. 2024 fantasy football. The next team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Tomlin has named Russell Wilson as the starter. Ladies and gentlemen, don't pick Russell Wilson in your fantasy because he is a bum. But guess who you could pick, though? Mike Tomlin says he has a Justin Fields package on the way. Don't be surprised against the Atlanta Falcons if they have a Justin Fields package. Now, I still think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be last in the division. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the toughest schedule in the NFL. You at Atlanta, at Denver, and at home against the Chargers. Oh, that is tough. Ooh, and in the last 8 games of the season, you have the Chiefs, Eagles, and divisional opponents. Oh, my goodness. That's going to be tough. Now, who to pick? You got TJ Watt. Great defensive line. The secondary is somewhat mid. Mike Tomlin will have his first losing season in 17 years. Look, you're in a tough AFC North. If you're talking about the AFC, you're talking about 7 teams. 3 of those teams from the AFC North are making the playoffs. 3 of those teams from the AFC North are going to make the playoffs. You might take 1 from the South, 1 from the West, and maybe 2 from the East. That's how the AFC is. It's a very tough and competitive division. Look, George Pickens is the number 1 wide receiver. You traded away Deontay Johnson to the Carolina Panthers for a draft pick. You had Najee Harris, but they don't use Najee Harris right. And here's the issue that I have with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The offensive line is awful. The offensive line is god awful. I mean, Coach Ball, do you pick anybody on fantasy when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin? I mean, who do you pick? I'm not picking Russell Wilson. And DCL says, opinion on Travis Kelce leaving. He is not leaving the Kansas City Chiefs. Erwin Curtis says, talk about bad signings. LOL. Wilson belongs back on the raft with Tom Hanks. LOL. Movie Castaway. Go ahead, Coach Ball.
Erwin, man, you are on it. You're on fire. I love that. You know, hey, man, that defense, the defense has some monsters on it, man. You got T.J. Watt, arguably, you know, he's right there with Miles. You got Minka Fitzpatrick, you know, in that secondary. You got Big Haywood there. He's always a monster. You got Highsmith, another stud. You got Patrick Big Game McQueen, Big Game Queen there. They got him from their arch rivals, the Baltimore Ravens. So I think he's going to come with some bad intentions. Fantasy-wise, man, I got a feeling that I think he's starting off, you know, kind of questionable, but Jalen Warren, I think he's going to be the guy that probably gets you some points. Najee Harris, man, I don't know. He's a guy that's been drafted way up there, just underproduced. But, yeah, you talked about George Pickens. Name me a Pittsburgh Steeler wide receiver after George Pickens.
Nobody.
I'm looking at the roster. Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins, Roman Wilson, rookie out of Michigan. He could be a guy maybe. Van Jefferson. That's a name. The former Ram. He could be that guy that steps up. But besides that, you know, you got the big tight end who out of Penn State, but he ended up getting injured. They got a backup tight end that's humongous out of Georgia, Darnell Washington. It'll be his second year. He could be a guy that you see in the next couple of years. But like you said, man, I don't pick anybody for the Steelers. If there's one guy that stands out, it would be Jalen Warren, and it's got to be kind of late. It's got to be close to that 8th or 9th round before I would really look at him. Russell Wilson, I mean, the guy's 35 years old and looks like he just graduated high school. You know what I'm saying? Justin Fields, I mean, for him not to beat him out, that's pretty embarrassing. You know, Justin Fields was the number 1 rated guy out of high school. He was top guy for Ohio State, you know, took them to a natty. And yeah, man, I think Warren out of those backs kind of give you a little bit of a bump up because you do have a quarterback that can move around a little bit. So, you know, guys can't really cheat too much on that running back play when you got a quarterback that can maneuver around. But yeah, I see it being a long season since you named that schedule. And I would love to see what the over and under is on the Pittsburgh Steelers and maybe place a little wager on that. That's a good holy Gator is in the house.
Kobe Price says, hey, everyone, Totem Pole Nation, biggest fan here. Gators in the house says Van Jefferson is a former Florida Gator. But it's not going to be the Florida Gators this week. It's going to be the Miami Hurricanes. We'll be talking about that later in the show. But this is for you, Toby Price. This is for you. This right here is for Gator.
Gator is in the house.
Man, we got 24 more teams to get down. We went to the AFC East and the AFC North, And now we're going to the AFC South. Tell us about the Houston Texans. Everybody's been rattling up about C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans. They got Stephon Diggs in the wide receiver spot. They got Tank Dell. They got a great running back. The defense has been legit. They got Will Anderson, the linebacker. Oh, my goodness. Who would you pick? Fantasy football, who you picking for? The Houston Texans, Alliance Stadium. Who are you picking? EA Sports, Electronic Arts, Madden NFL 25. How about those Houston Texans?
This is the sexiest football team when it comes to fantasy football. You got Stephon Diggs, arguably one of the better wide receivers, coming over with a big chip on his shoulder and some money in his pocket. So he's going to be linking up with the rookie of the year, C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, how he went number 2 is baffling to me. I know the Carolina Panthers are still biting their lip over that one. Nico Collins, man, 6'4", 215 out of University of Michigan. Huge guy. I believe he's coming into his 3rd season. We talked about those 3rd-year guys. You get some time, under the belt, the system. Tank Dell, University of Houston, speedster, 5'10", 165 pounds. Man, he was dynamic when he was in there. Dude, Robert Woods, he used to be a stud in Buffalo, good veteran receiver. I don't think he has any value, but listen to this name, John Minchie III. Okay, he was a guy that went through some health issues. Now he's back. There wasn't anybody more dynamic for them in the preseason. I know the preseason don't count, but you know what? Maybe there's something to that guy. So keep him on the back burner, maybe to see him, maybe pick him up late once one of those big studs go down. He could be a guy that step in there, make a huge impact. Dalton Schultz, man, big tight end, 6'5", 244 out of the University of Stanford. Going into his 6th season, I believe, 28 years old. You always want a good check down guy. And when you have receivers like that, they cannot cheat on that tight end. You're going to get a linebacker on that tight end. And same thing goes for Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, I believe, is going to have a monster season this year. He's 28 years old. Out of the University of Oklahoma, 6'1", 220. He's another guy with a chip on his shoulder and some dollars in his pockets. He wants to win a championship. Anything happens to Joe Mixon, though, you definitely want to keep an eye on it. Damian Pierce, the Florida Gator, 5'10", 214, University of Florida, going into what? His 3rd season. Keep an eye on those 3rd-year guys because they end up being studs. Another guy that ended up falling on their roster that definitely has a big chip on his shoulder and a small little bit in his pocket is Cam Akers. Cam Akers was a guy for the Rams that made a huge impact, had an injury, 5'10", 217 out of the University of Florida State. So, keep an eye on those 3 guys. But, I think quarterback, when you have that many weapons, you're obviously going to be a top 5. When it comes to quarterback positions, that guy's definitely going to be top 5. Definitely should finish in the top 10, barring injury. And they got some good studs up front, man. And, Laramie Tunsil, the big fella out of Ole Miss, the guy that was smoking bong hits when he was drafted in the 1st round. He dropped about 6 or 7 slots, but what a stud he was for the University of Miami. And they gave up so much to get him in Texas. Houston Texans, I love their head coach, former linebacker there at the university. They got Shaq Mason up front too. He's another guy, played guard for a championship pedigree New England Patriots. So I like what the Houston Texans have on both sides of the ball. But offensively, those names that I just mentioned, if Mixon can stay healthy and he gets the touches, I could easily see him being, a top 7 back. If Diggs and him can connect, he could be a top 5 guy. But the guy that I would pick out of all of those guys, Nico Collins, man. Nico Collins, he's just a big 6'4", 215. He's gonna win. He's gonna win those jump balls and stuff like that. And yeah, man, he's a guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder. Very interested in seeing what the Houston Texans do. How about yourself, Coach? What is your thought process with the Houston Texans? Do they run away with it, and do they contend for a Super Bowl? And CJ,
we got comments. We got comments, and then I'll answer your question. So, Sub-Zero Friendly says, "Go Georgia." Gator says, "Now, Lambert, we're going to retire that drip that you're wearing, and after this weekend, you will never wear the U again." That's impossible because the U is the U. Mario Cristobal. Erwin Curtis says, "Diggs could actually be a drag on the team. Too unstable." Toby Price's question for you guys: what does the Cowboys have to do this year to be in the Super Bowl contenders besides winning games? I'm just trying to learn. Erwin Curtis says, "Toby, you're derailing the stream. We're on the AFC South. LOL." Toby says, "Sorry." Toby, you're good. Thank you for asking the question. We'll get to that question when we get to the NFC, but we know damn well the Dallas Cowboys ain't winning no damn Super Bowl. We know damn well they ain't finna win no Super Bowl because they're allergic. They are allergic to prosperity. They are allergic to prosperity. When it gets to Christmas in January and when the game really matters, you know what happens to the Dallas Cowboys. They lose. But Coach Ball, to answer your question about the Texans, look, they're going to have a setback. The defensive coordinators, for every defensive coordinator in the NFL, is going to start to figure out C.J. Stroud. Every defensive coach is going to start to figure out C.J. Stroud like they figured out Lamar Jackson. Look, the sophomore season is going to be a little bit rough. C.J. Stroud has not seen everything. Even through his rookie year when he played great, he hasn't seen everything yet. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Aaron Rodgers. You're adding new pieces. There's going to be a lot of high expectations. But when you look at the Houston Texans team, their schedule is pretty tough. They have a very tough schedule. I think Houston Texans are top 5 or top 7 toughest schedule in the NFL when it comes to the Houston Texans. So like I said, their schedule is not going to be easy. I mean, right now, the first 3 games, you got 2 road games. You're at the Colts, you're versus the Bears, and you're at the Vikings. So like I said, when it comes to the Houston Texans, I agree. You got Stephon Diggs, C.J. Stroud, Damian Pierce. You got Joe Mixon. I understand, but they're going to have a setback because their schedule is tough. They play multiple playoff teams from last year. I mean, I'll read this whole schedule right now after week 3. You're at home against Jacksonville. You're at Buffalo, at home against Buffalo. You play the Patriots. You're at Green Bay. The divisional games are going to be tough between the Colts, Tennessee, and Jacksonville. It doesn't matter how bad or good they are. They're going to be tough. Now, you're at New York. You play the Detroit Lions. At Dallas on Monday Night Football in November. It's going to be tough. The Titans at Jacksonville. And look, when you look at the Texans' schedule, you don't have a bye until week 14. So you're telling the Houston Texans play 13 straight games without a bye week. 13 straight without a bye week. Then you play the Miami Dolphins at Kansas City, at home against Baltimore, and then at home, and then on the road against Tennessee. Look, their schedule is tough in the top 5. You don't get a bye week until you got an 18-game season, 18 weeks. You don't have a bye week until week 13. So when you're talking about the Houston Texans, they're gonna get beat up in the AFC South. They're gonna get beat up. I agree with everything you said. They got great players, but dude, they're gonna get beat up because this schedule that I just read, it may be a little easy, but you got 2 of your first 3 road games, but it is brutal towards the end. Very brutal, especially when you don't have a bye week until week 14. Now, the next team we can talk about is the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts. Now, AR5, Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen has been a great coach. By the way, to all the people that think, oh, well, the Colts sucked last year. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they were one play away without AR5 with Gardner Minshew to almost make the playoffs. It came out to a week 17, week 18 game. It came out of that, and they would have been in the playoffs. So when you look at the Colts, all I think of is AR5. Jonathan Taylor is not the same running back. I think after that injury that he had, or he meant to get a lot of money and he didn't get it, and they had to go through some change. Now, I pick an AR5. Now, I know AR5 wasn't that good in college with the Florida Gators. He wasn't that good, and he was rising up to greatness a little bit until he got hit in the head and multiple other injuries. But at the end of the day, he looks pretty shaky to me. Yes, Erwin Curtis Richardson looks shaky. We'll have to figure out. It's his second year. He's coming off injury, right? The Colts defense has been legit. Great defensive line. They got a solid quarterback base. But look, it's not much for me that I can pick. Coach Bald, help me figure this out when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts. They almost made the playoffs last year. Can they improve from what they were last year? And are you going to draft anybody on fantasy from the Indianapolis Colts besides AR5?
Right. Well, they got the big receiver there from USC, Michael Pittman Jr. He's going into his fourth year, 6'4", 225 pounds. And, you also got wide receiver Josh Downs out of North Carolina, 5'10", 175. Alec Pierce, University of Cincinnati, 6'3", 211. Because you have such a big quarterback that is mobile, guys will have longer times to get open. He extends those plays. Adonai Mitchell, the big wide receiver out of University of Texas, man, slid, I believe, to one of the first picks of the second round. He is a guy that I would target as well because the AR5, I mean, if he can stay healthy, he could put up crazy Michael Vick style numbers where he could get you 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns every couple of games. He's that big, that good. I'm hearing a lot of teams are scared to death of the guy, but that's the thing. When you have a shoulder injury, that might get to your head, especially when you're a quarterback. So the confidence that he builds early in the season is going to be huge. He could be a guy that finishes top 3, as far as total points overall. He could be a guy that finishes on the bench and Joe Flacco starts, unfortunately. It all depends on how they scheme him up. He could be the most dynamic player in the league. He could be just another guy. So it's going to be on them. It's going to be on that offensive line. And when you talk about offensive line, man, Quentin Nelson, it's probably been one of my favorite offensive linemen. He's going into his 6th year, 6'5", 330 out of Notre Dame. Man, he is your prototypical bodyguard there at left guard. He is a force of nature. So I love having him up front blocking. The defense, they've got some players on there. They got DeForest Buckner, former 49er. They got Kenny Moore in that secondary. They've got some studs on both sides of the ball. Grover Stewart on the defensive line, Zaire Franklin. They've got some players, but it's all about that quarterback position. If he's dynamic, it will open up, big running lanes for a Jonathan Taylor. Them doing direct runs with him could definitely open up for Taylor. Taylor got the big money, so he don't have to worry about that anymore, man. Hopefully he's ready to pound the football and steps up for those guys. I don't know where you draft the Jonathan Taylor. I put question marks on certain teams, and this team is a big question mark. If they're a great team and they make the playoffs and AR5, shows what he did, when he was at Florida and they beat Tennessee. If he has that type of a impact, in his second season, then everybody could be a big time threat on this team. But the only one that I say is not really questionable is the big fella, Michael Pittman Jr., the tight end. The wide receiver. Tight end play, they got Mo Alley Cox from VCU. They got the giant Jelani Woods from UVA, a 6'7", 253-pounder. So, yeah, man, they got some size at both tight end positions. If those guys can get the running game open, it'll open up everything for AR5, and they could definitely be a team that could shock the world. Every year you have somebody come out of nowhere, make the playoffs. Could be the Colts' year, but I'm not buying on those guys myself. Who do we got next? I'm thinking the Jags.
Yeah, so we get to the Jazz. Gator says AR is going to fit right in, coach, with the Colts. Pitt Jr. is a beast. Yes, we got Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, both teammates at Clemson University, EA Sports Electronic Arts, Madden NFL 25, College Football 25, and EA Sports Electronic Arts, Madden NFL 25, NFL on CBS, NFL on Fox, NFL on Peacock. The Jacksonville Jaguars. They got great talent. Doug Peterson's third year in the system. Last year they were number one. They went from 8-3 to 9-8. Look, Trevor Lawrence got paid big time, $50 million per year. He's won one playoff game. His record is 20-30. Now I think they'll be successful. They got a new defensive coordinator. The offense is better. I know they lost Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley went to the Tennessee Titans. They still got a great receiver core. They still got a good, solid tight end, and I think their defense will improve. I think if you're looking at fantasy-wise, Trevor Lawrence can give you fantasy numbers. I think Trevor Lawrence is a great, solid quarterback. I think he's around a great coaching staff. I know his wins and losses didn't determine it, but I think he'll be solid this year. The Jacksonville Jaguars are a team you want to watch out for. Doug Peterson has been to the Super Bowl. They made it to the playoffs. I don't see them missing the playoffs back-to-back years. So my two picks for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence. They also got Mac Jones for a 6th-round pick. Now, Trevor Lawrence does have a history of getting hurt. How confident can Mac Jones be in a Doug Peterson system for the Jacksonville Jaguars? I know it's preseason. He played okay. He played well. I don't really care. It's preseason. But Trevor Lawrence does have a history of getting injured, right? Shoulder problems, ankle problems. Now, I don't know if he's really barely missed any games. But if that offensive line doesn't block, that is going to take a toll for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if you're looking for a backup quarterback, that if Trevor Lawrence goes down, you'll probably take a Mac Jones. But my solid two are Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. Coach Bald, who are you taking from the AFC South from the Jacksonville Jaguars? Is there any other guys that pop out in the 2024 fantasy football?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, they lost Calvin Ridley. So there's a lot of touches to go around this team. Evan Ingram, he was a guy that used to play for the New York Football Giants, tight end out of Ole Miss, 6'3", 240. He's kind of built like a wide receiver. He runs like a wide receiver. I like them getting him the ball. He's been there for a little bit. ETN is going to have a monster season. He had a couple games last year where he was the top back to score that week. I would definitely have him in my top 7 running backs. He would be a guy that I wouldn't even mind reaching on. You know, another big guy they picked up from Buffalo that could really stretch the field. Gabe Davis, 6'2", 225 out of UCF. It's always good to have a big target, and that guy fits the protocol. And Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver out of the University of LSU. And I believe LSU might be wide receiver U. All the guys that are in the league that have had so much success, he's a stud, you know, at 6'3", 210. The guy ran like a 4.3 40, man. He's got all the attributes that you want. And on that defense, you know, you talk about defense, everybody forgets about the other Josh Allen, the University of Kentucky Josh Allen. Man, that guy can crack a quarterback. They've got some good weapons on both sides of the ball. I like their offensive line. I'm sold on these guys making the playoffs. You know, they picked up Eric Armstead out of He was University of Oregon, but he was one of the stud defensive linemen for the San Francisco 49ers. They've got some ball players, and the fact that if Lawrence does go down, I don't think the wheels will completely fall off when you have a guy like Matt Jones that has played with some really good players. And, he gets a big upgrade on the talent around him. When you think of what New England had last year, now all of a sudden he has an ATN, he has an Ingram. He has a Christian Kirk, who we haven't mentioned, who's kind of been off and on injured. Out of Texas A&M, Gabe Davis. I mean, there's a lot of weapons on this offense. And I think Trevor Lawrence stepping into his third year, I definitely think he's going to be a guy. If he can be healthy, he could be a top five guy point-wise at the end of the season. The guy can move. He's the it. He was the one everybody wanted. And I think if he can stay healthy, they can definitely make a big push and be one of those shocker teams that goes in there. And, just a few years ago, I think they went to Pittsburgh and beat them in the first round, when they had Fournette. I could see them, doing that same thing. So I'm looking for Jacksonville to have a good season. And that's another thing. When you come to Florida early in the season, they have a huge home field advantage because people are not used to the humidity that's here. So they probably play a 1:00 game. Man, it's going to be brutal those first couple games when you come to any place in Florida to play a home game.
Erwin Curtis says Lawrence will be better, but still not great fantasy numbers. Mirko Como says ciao from Italy. Erwin Curtis said ciao, stick to soccer, Mirko, LOL. Mirko Como says Vacaculo, LOL. Thank you, Totem Pole Nation, for tuning in. This is for all of you that have stayed with us. We appreciate you. Faith, family, football, and the future of content creation. The next team we have, Coach Ball, next team is the Tennessee Titans. Brian Callahan's the new coach. Ryan Tannehill is no longer there. I think, to be honest, if we were still in the AFC North, I wouldn't be. I'd rather take Ryan Tannehill over Russell Wilson, but that's a different topic for a different day. Now, who are you picking fantasy-wise? I don't know who to pick on the Tennessee Titans. Look, you got Calvin Ridley. You lost Derrick Henry. You got Tony Pollard. You got DeAndre Hopkins. That's your main three. I mean, what is the identity of the Tennessee Titans? You got Brian Callahan, former offensive coordinator, who is the head coach. What is the Tennessee Titans' identity? Malik Willis is with the Green Bay Packers now, and you're going with Will Levis. I'm not putting Will Levis on my fantasy. How good is the Tennessee Titans defense? You lost Mike Vrabel as the head coach. I don't think you should have fired the man because Tennessee wasn't nothing. Before he got there, they was okay, but he elevated the Tennessee Titans to a different level. They just couldn't find a solid quarterback, and it was just they just ran down after the point. They were injury prone and tired. Now, look, I think the Tennessee Titans will be picking in the top 5 of the draft. Not doing the Patriots. The Tennessee Titans will be picking the top 5. You're telling me that Will Levis is going to outplay Trevor Lawrence, AR5, and CJ Stroud. Look, Coach Ball, are you picking anybody from the Tennessee Titans besides DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Tony Pollard, or do you not pick them because you don't trust Will Levis?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the head right there. Two guys I love, though, on this football team, Peter Skoronski, okay? You're talking about a left guard that was a number 1 pick out of Northwestern. He's manning the left guard position. The left tackle, C.J. Latham, the big freak out of Alabama. That's going to be your left side of that offensive line, and that's what I think I see out of those guys. I think you see them stretching the field. You put Hopkins on one end, Ridley. You got Tyler Boyd, there. I believe they picked him up out of Cincinnati. So you got those three guys split out everywhere. And then you try to pound that football between Pollard and Spears and, Will Levis, too. He's a guy that he's built like a Tim Tebow, man. I mean, he is jacked up quarterback. I could see them doing some direct runs with them. But like we were saying earlier, there's some teams that just kind of have some, red flags. And I see that all over this team. If I had to pick one player out of everybody, I mean, Calvin Ridley had a pretty good season. One of those wide receivers has to step up. Hopkins is a little long in the tooth at 32 years old. Boyd, just coming over from Cincinnati, might not know the system well, but he's in the same boat as Ridley. So I think it's a real crapshoot at quarterback. The tight end, Okonkwo, he didn't really do much, last season, but he's going to be going into his second year. I'd go running back, man. And the one I would like, Pollard is going to go a little earlier than most probably should take him. I like Tajay Spears, man, the little scat back out of Tulane. I think he's just dynamic speed wise. I think they'll scheme up some, packages for him. He would be a guy, but there's not one of those guys that I would pick there's none of those guys that I would pick, man. They would all have to be free agents that I ended up, picking up that nobody else did. But yeah, I would not spend any picks on the Tennessee Titans. And yeah, unfortunately, Tennessee fans, I got to agree with my man Lambo on that. I see these guys picking top 5, number 1 overall.
Urban Curtis said it the best. Titans are not relevant in fantasy. Next, LOL. He said they're not even relevant. Merkel Como says, they're not even relevant. But we're going to the AFC West. Denver Broncos, Mile High Stadium, Sean Payton, Bo Nix. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I said it last Saturday. Bo Nix will win Rookie of the Year. Bo Nix is going to win Rookie of the Year. Now, I'm not saying the Denver Broncos are going to make the playoffs because you got the Raiders, Chiefs, and the Broncos and a tough AFC West. I think the Raiders will be picking in the top 5 as well. But starting with the Denver Broncos, Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a great pick. Who's their wide receiver? Is it Tim Patrick? Tim Patrick, if I'm correct.
He's gone.
He's gone. He's gone. So
they cut him, and he is now, I believe, on the practice squad of the Detroit Lions. Yeah.
So I mean, let's talk Denver Broncos. I think they got a solid running back. I think Bo Nix will give you a ton of fantasy numbers. Now they lost a lot of wide receivers. I think one of them went to the Browns. One of them is to another team. They really revamped the whole team. They revamped it. Now, offensive lines to make some improvements. Sean Payton knows how to coach. Look, he turned around New Orleans in like 1 or 2 years. I think he's going to turn this team around this year. As bad as Russell Wilson was, they were 8-9. There were a few plays away from making the playoffs. As bad as Russell Wilson was, I think Bo Nix is the most ready quarterback. You spent 2 years at Auburn. You spent 4 years at Oregon, EA Sports, Electronic Arts, College Football 25, EA Sports, Electronic Arts, Madden NFL 25. When you spent 6 seasons in college, he's pro ready. Footwork is great. The ability to adapt, to get rid of the ball under 2 seconds, the quickness to throw the football. Look, I'm taking my rookie year candidate on my fantasy, Bo Nix. The question is, are you picking him over the other quarterbacks in the AFC West? You got Justin Herbert, who gives you great fantasy numbers. You got Patrick Mahomes, 3-time Super Bowl champion, one of the best quarterbacks right now. Has a chance to be the GOAT, but I don't think he'll ever surpass Tom Brady. We'll talk about that later, but Coach Ball, are you picking anybody for the Denver Broncos in that tough conference in the AFC West? Because it's loaded and stacked. Bo Nix is going to be probably the 3rd best or the last. No, he's the 4th best because you got Gardner Minshew in there. So Gardner Minshew's been in the league longer. But who are you picking fantasy-wise? Mile High Stadium, the Denver Broncos. It's one of the most toughest places to play is Mile High Stadium. So what are you thinking, Coach Ball?
You know what? The Miami Dolphins were famous at one time for having the no-name defense. I think the Denver Broncos might be a team that is the no-name offense. They just got a bunch of dudes, man. Nobody really stands out. But, like you said with the coach, man, Cortland Sutton, the 6'4", 216 wide receiver from SMU going into his sixth season, he kind of reminds me of a Marquise Colston. You remember when Drew Brees was in the Saints and he was the coach, and Marquise Colston was a guy that had, I want to say, 8 seasons of 1,000 yards, never made a Pro Bowl. I could see him having a big impact, the big receiver. Josh Reynolds, they got him from Detroit Lions. He was a guy that just couldn't get into the lineup, but when he did, he played pretty well. He could be a player I see getting some reps. Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma, the speedster. He's a guy that is coming into his second year. He could be a guy that I could see. I think you're going to see a lot of dinking and dunking from Bo Nix. He's not the big arm guy, but he can be, if you leave that available. And when you look in the running backs, you got Javonte Williams. He had a good season. He had a good season until he got hurt. P. Ryan, he's been a guy that looks like Tarzan, but for fantasy football, he's played like Jane. He gives you nothing. I would avoid him. Jaleel McLaughlin. He was a guy that came in late, showed some definitely some explosion. They also got the running back out of Notre Dame. Aldrick
Estime.
Right. So
Aldrick Estime.
I think they're definitely going to be a team that runs the ball by committee. Yep. So when I look at the Broncos, I'm with you. I avoid pretty much everybody on their team, and I don't see them, being a big time contender. But like you, I like Bo Nix, man. Bo Nix, I believe, is going to be that rookie of the year. He just fits in that system good, and the coach is going to play to his strengths. Got rid of Russell Wilson, got rid of Jurdy. So, it's going to be all on him. I love the corner, Patrick Surtain II. Probably one of the best corners in the league, University of Alabama. He's going to shut down one side of the field. But besides that, I really don't see a lot of value with the Broncos. If I had to choose a guy, I would say Sutton. Looks like he could definitely be that guy, but wouldn't be surprised if Josh Reynolds didn't step up. Tight end wise, they had 2 guys last year that really didn't do a whole lot. I believe Troutman got injured, and DeLuke came in, and Greg DeLuke, but he didn't do a whole lot. DeLuche, he didn't do a whole lot either, so I would avoid that tight end spot, but who knows? Maybe that's an under-the-radar play when you got a guy like Bo Nix at the quarterback position. Make sure you're giving us a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe. If you're liking what we were talking about. We're going to keep it moving. We go from the Broncos to who we got next, Coach?
The Kansas City Chiefs. Erwin Curtis says, Bo at QB, Luke at center. All you need is the General Lee. Aaron Curtis, you are on point. Thank you for commenting, Total Bowl Nation. The defending Super Bowl champions, the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, right? The Lombardi Trophy, the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Kansas City Chiefs in 2020. Tom Brady's final Super Bowl, 31-9 in the 2020 Super Bowl at home in Tampa Bay, Florida. Kansas City Chiefs. You got a lot of guys in that fantasy. Number 1, I picked Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown might miss the first 2 games with a shoulder injury that he dealt with in the preseason. So I picked him, but I had to sacrifice somebody else because he hurt his shoulder during a preseason game. That hurts. You got Travis Kelce. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You got Isaiah Pacheco. You got they drafted Xavier Worthy out of Texas. It's all about the team. It's all about the hordes. They drafted Xavier Worthy. You still got Patrick Mahomes. That Chiefs defense. Look, here's who you draft in fantasy. Travis Kelce. Now, the question is, do you pick a tight end that high in the draft? I don't think so. You need more depth at wide receiver and running back. Running back first, because running backs get war and tear more than wide receivers and tight ends. So you want to pick the running backs first. Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to get Patrick Mahomes in the third unless you want to be desperate. Pick him in the third round because you're not going to sit there in fantasy and get Patrick Mahomes in the 8th round. That's not going to happen. Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback right now. So you look at it from perspective. You got Hollywood Brown. It's a great pick. I think after week 2 or week 3, go ahead and draft. I think Hollywood Brown is going to be something special along the lines. With Patrick Mahomes, they got Juju Smith-Schuster back. Don't pick Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, he's more like a possession catcher. I wouldn't pick him. I would pick the kicker, Harrison Butker. I think that's a great fantasy pick for a kicker. If you're not going to pick, if Justin Tucker is taken off your board, Harrison Butker, the kickers are very, very important. Those are the 2 best solid kickers in the NFL, Harrison Butker and Justin Tucker. Those are some very, very, very solid kickers. MK's in the house, says Coach Bald and Lambo. Hello, MK. Thank you for tuning in to Total Pole Nation. MK, this is for
MK
you.
is in the house.
Coach Bald, who are you picking? Arrowhead Stadium, 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, the winner of the 2022 and the 2023 Super Bowl champions. Who are you picking fantasy-wise for the Kansas City Chiefs? And will the Kansas City Chiefs 3-peat this year? I say no.
It has never happened in the National Football League that a team has won 3 Lombardis in a row. So
Yes.
I'm on the same fence with you. It's not going to happen. Pachenko is the guy I love. The running back, 5'10", 215, built like a fire hydrant out of the University of Rutgers. The Jersey guy. I love him at that running back spot. You got Clyde Edward, who hasn't really done anything. He was great out of LSU, didn't do much. Rashee Rice, that was a big name, big wide receiver, 6'2", 203 out of SMU. He was an individual that a lot of people had high expectations on. I don't know. He's coming into his 2nd year. We'll see. I know you love Hollywood. And, yeah, Hollywood is definitely a guy that falls, that he might be sitting there late to last round where you could scoop him up. But, yeah, Travis Kelce, you're talking about still to be the man, you got to beat the man. And until I see a better tight end, that's the guy right there. And you know what? Him and Mahomes, they're like peanut butter and jelly. They're like Rice and Montana. They're like Tom Brady and Randy Moss. They are an unbelievable tandem. They love each other. They're brothers. They're going to try to make They're going to try to make a package for Kelce to get in the end zone. You know, they do those definitely when they get in that red zone, they organize some plays where Kelce might line up at quarterback and punch the ball in. So I look to see him have big numbers again. And yeah, he just signed a huge $100 million deal with his brother to do podcasts. Unbelievable. That's so awesome. But yeah, that's who I think you're looking at. And because of all of that, what we just named, when you got a guy like Chris Jones, who is arguably one of the best interior defensive linemen. He sits there at the D tackle position. You put him at the 3. He's unblockable because you can't double team him. It just opens up everything for the defense, you know. So a defense, you definitely keep an eye on that defense as well because they're usually going to be playing with a lead. And when you're playing with a lead, teams tend to go and do big plays, end up being interceptions, end up being sacks, end up being fumbles. So keep Kansas City's defense in line as well when you look at that Kansas City Chiefs team trying to three-peat. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
MK says, I see you, Coach Ball, with the Tom Brady jersey and a decked out Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Erwin Curtis says, Chiefs fantasy heavy. But not putting all my eggs in one basket. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket because we are going to go to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders. Antonio Pierce, the new head coach. The starting quarterback is Gardner Minshew. Who do you pick on fantasy? I mean, you lost Josh Jacobs. You're coming from the Josh McDaniels. You're trying to rebuild that team. I think they were pretty solid. But look, they're picking the top 5. Is Gardner Minshew better than Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes? No. Is he better than Bo Nix? Yes. But the Raiders have a very tough schedule. Their week 1 matchup is against the Chargers, which we'll talk about the Chargers in a second. Look, you're picking probably Devontae Adams on fantasy, right? You got Christian Wilkins, so you got a solid defensive end. I think you drafted a tight end at number 9. I think you drafted Michael Mayer, if I'm correct, at number 9 or number 13, I think. Brock Bowers. You dropped Brock Bowers at 13. So, Brock Bowers, Devontae Adams are probably my 2 solid picks. If you look at the defensive side, will you pick the Raiders defense? Great defensive line. You got Max Crosby on the other side. You got Christian Wilkins from Clemson, played at the Miami Dolphins. So they got a loaded defensive roster. I think they got solid quarters. My only issue is what is their identity going to be on offense? And if you pick Devontae Adams, will he be a Jet with Aaron Rodgers by the end of the season? If it doesn't go well, if you watch Receiver on Netflix of how frustrated Devontae Adams is, I know, congratulations to Devontae Adams. He had a newborn child a couple months ago or last year or whenever it happened. So congratulations to Devontae Adams on a newborn child on the Netflix series of Receiver. But Devontae Adams expresses frustration. Like I said, he's going to be a New York Jet. He's going to want out of Vegas. I think Antonio Pierce has him in the right direction. But you're in the AFC West. You got the Chiefs and you got the Chargers, and you're going to battle for 3rd place and picking in the top 5. So, Coach Ball, how do you feel about the Las Vegas Raiders?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be a huge advantage for the Raiders when you go there because you're not used to that bright lights, big city, the casinos. Man, it is phenomenal getting out there. And I'll tell you one guy that I really have a bullseye on, and that is Zamir White. Let me repeat myself. Zamir White, 5'11", 215 pounds out of the University of Georgia. That's right, Georgia Bulldogs. Former Bulldog that he reminds me of. Hold on, everybody. Nick Chubb. This guy is a monster. He could have a huge season for these Raiders. I love the coach. He is a hard-nosed, former awesome linebacker for the New York Football Giants, Antonio Pierce. He's going to have this team ready for a fist fight. All these teams are going to go into Las Vegas wanting to do a 7-on-7 clinic. Guess what? He's going to turn this game into a fist fight, and it starts with pounding the football. Zamir White is going to get a lot of touches this season. Like you mentioned, tight end, Brock Bowers. What a freak of nature that guy is. 6'3", 245. I think he ran a 4.4, 4.3 at that size. And then the guy they drafted the year before out of Notre Dame, 6'4", 265, Mike Mayer. You got 2 big tight ends that can run block. You know, that's how I like my tight ends. I mean, I love some Travis Kelce, but let's face it, he's a big wide receiver. He ain't going to win no blocking title. He's not going to be blocking anybody downfield. These guys the Raiders drafted, they better be blocking downfield or they'll be on the sidelines. And you mentioned wide receiver. He's the best wide receiver in the division, Davante Adams. I think you're going to see them scheme up some plays to get him the ball and keep him happy. He's a California guy from Fresno State. And I think if the Raiders can get that ground game going, it's going to open up the field for him. You got your boy, former Patriot, Jacoby Myers. He was a big player, 6'2", 200 out of NC State. He could be an under-the-radar guy. They got the speedster Trey Tucker, more of a more of a slot guy, but he's got speed to burn. So I like him as well. Another guy they picked up in the offseason from the Minnesota Vikings was Alexander Madison. So he could be a guy if White was to get hurt. You could see him get some touches. He's from Boise State. Boise State usually puts out some good players, but he's got to catch it out of the backfield as well. And Gardner Minshew, people aren't really high on him. He's not your 6'5", 230-pounder, that can throw the ball out of the stadium. But the guy, people love him. All right. It's the same thing with a Jameis Winston. He's going to keep it. He's going to keep everybody having a good time. He's got good vibes, Baker Mayfield style vibes. And I could definitely see the Oakland Raiders being that second best team in that conference. And hey, depending on how they run the ball with the running back Jahmyr White, they could be a force to beat there in Las Vegas. Go Raiders. And I want to give a huge shout out to one of the biggest offseason pickups for the Las Vegas Raiders, and that is Miss Sarah Blake Cheek. That's right. She's going to be in the stands for some of them games. And I tell you what, the Raider fan base just got a whole hell of a lot more interesting and good looking with the addition to her. So kudos to the Raiders for having a great offseason. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the Raiders. Where are we going next?
Erwin Curtis says Mark Davis needs to sell the team and going to be the next Don King. LOL. That's Davis' first love, boxing. Danny Kevin McCullough says, hey, from the UK, these guys are talking about American throw ball. Just WM says, fuck the Bucks. Fuck the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What he said. Coach Ball, I got to ask you a question. So you're telling me, and you think that the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be the second best team in that AFC West?
I do. I think it comes down to coaching and toughness, and having a half a season under the belt gives them advantage over what they have there in, LA with the Chargers. Revamped everything there. So, yeah, my second place is going to be the Raiders, man. They're just a team that, hey, get off the bus, right? You get off the bus, put those guys in a cage match. The Raiders are going to be undefeated this season. They got some bad mugs on both sides of the squad.
Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, Coach Ball said that the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be second in the AFC West. No, they're not, because the Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, Gus Edwards. Look, their defensive line is the most underrated defensive line in the NFL. Who are you picking in fantasy? Ladies and gentlemen, what has worked for me in the past is Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert gives you fantasy numbers like crazy. Look, when it comes to the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh won. Listen to me. He won with Colin Kaepernick. He won with Colin Kaepernick, a 5th-round pick out of Nevada. Jim Harbaugh can win with anybody. Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are a threat to the Kansas City Chiefs to stop them from getting into a 3-peat in the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Chargers, do not be surprised if the Los Angeles Chargers win 11 games this year. 11. Kansas City might win 12 or 13, but they might win 11. Now, hey, look, first-round pick, you got Joe Alt, great offensive tackle. Notre Dame is known for great offensive tackle. You still got Joey Bosa. The wide receivers, well, they lost Mike Williams. They lost Keenan Allen. Look, DJ Chalk, former Jacksonville Jaguar. You got Darius Davis. I mean, you got a solid tight end in Will Disley. J.K. Dobbins is your starting running back. You got Bud Dupree, a former Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, dude, Gus Edwards. Oh, my God. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, I understand that they were injury-prone running backs with the Baltimore Ravens. But look, they got a solid tight. Hayden Hurst, Derwin James. I'm trying to tell you, this Chargers team may not be known for throwing the ball a lot, but it's going to be the Michigan formula when it comes to the LA Chargers. Ground and pound and burn up the clock. They're going to play the game of time of possession. They don't need to be slinging it like that, man. The Las Vegas Raiders are going to do something special. You got Quentin Johnson, the wide receiver. You got Tony Jefferson, a former Baltimore Raven. You still got Khalil back. I mean, oh my goodness. Y'all hadn't seen what the LA Chargers are finna give y'all. The Los Angeles Chargers are finna do something this year. I'm excited because Jim Harbaugh's job in NFL isn't done. Remember that November game, the Ravens versus the Chargers, the Harbaugh Bowl. He's going to prove something to the NFL. He's going to prove something. He says, hey, whatever happened in San Francisco, that's the past. That's the past. But at the end of the day, those Chargers are going to be a threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs don't want no smoke with the Chargers. Not with Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, you don't want no smoke. Justin Herbert's going to be a lot better. He got his former assistants like he had with the 49ers. He don't got all of them, but he got some. You got Greg Roman. Greg Roman was also part of the offensive coordinator side with Colin Kaepernick. He also helped elevate Lamar Jackson as well. So, look, the Los Angeles Chargers, I'm telling y'all, they're going to be 11-6 this year. They're going 11-6. I predict the future of the NFL. And you see the Chargers talk about, oh, they good. And don't be surprised if the Chargers start the season like 6-1. Don't be surprised if they start 6-1. I almost see they'd be like, I told you what's going to happen. Jim Harbaugh. I believe in Jim Harbaugh because he knows how to turn around a program in less than 24 hours. He did it with the 49ers. He's going to do it with the Los Angeles Chargers. The energy, the vibes, and the fans all around him. Coach Ball. Who are you picking? Because the Chargers have a better depth chart than the Las Vegas Raiders. On the offensive side and the defensive side, I know they're not maybe, as popular as the Browns or the Ravens or the Patriots talent-wise, but their defensive line is very – people not talking about them, so – they're a very underrated defensive line. Aaron Curry says, as Schwarzenegger would say, go Chargers, LOL. So how do you feel about the Chargers, Coach Bald?
Go Chargers, go. Dude, you are fired up about those guys. I'll tell you what I like about the Chargers. I love Derwin James Jr., one of the best safeties in the league. Was there a better suplex than when he caught Travis Kelce trying to jump over him? Not today, buddy. Rashawn Slater, huge left tackle out of Northwestern. And like you named, man, the big fella, Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, manning the right tackle. I love those three guys right there. Bosa, Mack, I don't know, man. They're kind of downtrodden on their career. Mack is 33 years old. Bosa's 29. Herbert, I don't know, man. He's got an ankle, they were saying. They just picked up Taylor Heineke, I believe, to back him up. So that's kind of a red flag for me. But you know what? I was saying there's some teams I just kind of avoid and stay away. When you look at that running back room, Gus Edwards, Baltimore Raven, I don't know. Dobbins, Baltimore Raven, yeah. Too injury prone. Isaiah Spiller, Texas A&M, going into his second year. He might be an under the radar guy. Now you're talking about wide receivers. Paul Moore from Tennessee going into a third year guy. He could be the guy. Clark, I'm not sold on him. Ladd McConkey, now he could be something out of Georgia. Rookie year, I'll give him a few weeks before I jump on his bandwagon. But that's about it. Hurst, I'm not impressed with. Disley, not impressed with. That third tight end, actually, the big fella, 6'8", 240 out of Stetson University, Donald Parham. That could definitely be a nightmare down in the red zone, but I'm not all in on them Chargers like you are. I would avoid most Chargers. And Herbert, I don't know if he's healthy. That's just me, man. I love those offensive players and the three players I named on defense. Asante Samuel Jr. out of the University of Florida State, went to IMG Academy. He is definitely a stud, but yeah, man, I'm not drinking the same Kool-Aid you are on those Chargers. But like my man Irwin said, go Chargers, go.
All right, we're finally on the NFC. 16 more teams to go. We're finally on the NFC. Starting with the NFC least, the NFC East. We're going to start off with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they got a lot of fantasy guys. Dak Prescott will give you numbers. You're lucky that fantasy football doesn't consist of the playoffs because Dak Prescott ain't going to do you no well. Dak Prescott ain't going to do you no good in the playoffs. He ain't going to do you no good. But Dak Prescott will give you great numbers in fantasy. CeeDee Lamb is the second highest paid wide receiver right behind Justin Jefferson at $34 million per year. Running back, they just signed Dalvin Cook. Oh, my goodness. They signed Dalvin Cook. Now, what type of Dalvin Cook we're going to get? Because, him with the Jets didn't really work out so well. So what type of Dalvin Cook are we going to be? Because, like I said, running backs only average 4 years. 4 years. Eric Curry says, Toby, your cowgirls are up. LOL. Yes. They don't have any other wide receivers that are the main. I mean, they got Brandon Cooks. That's about it. Michael Parsons on the other end. I think Stephon Gilmore is no longer there, if I'm correct. I think he went to another team. So defensively, I don't know how good they're going to be. They lost Dan Quinn, who is now a former head coach. Now he's the head coach of the Washington Commanders, a division rival. So if you look at that Cowboys team from fantasy wise, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, maybe Dalvin Cook. But like I said, Mike McCarthy is calling the plays. So he wants to talk about running the football more, and they're going to end up being more of a pass-happy team. And Dak Prescott is on his final year of this deal. Mike Zimmer's the new defensive coordinator. Mike McCarthy's on the final year of the deal. All of those guys are on a 1-year deal except CeeDee Lamb. I don't think Michael Parsons gets paid next year. So I think this would be great for fantasy-wise, but I am going to laugh. And the man from Seoul said it best. The Cowboys team, they're going to break it up. They're probably not going to be good this year. I wouldn't be surprised they drafted Shedeur Sanders within the top 5 of the draft. CeeDee Lamb stays there. Michael Parsons and Dak Prescott, they both go. And Mike McCarthy's no longer the head coach. And I still think that Bill Belichick will be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So I think Dak and CeeDee Lamb are on your top priorities for fantasy. Coach Ball, who do you have for the Dallas Cowboys? Erwin Curtis says Dak can't get it done. McCarthy has to go. By the way, Mike McCarthy has won 3 straight years with 12-plus wins. But if we're talking about Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin, they're somewhat the same. Let's be honest. Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin are somewhat the same. One Super Bowl. But Mike McCarthy's been to NFC Championship games in the past. But they're somewhat the same resume. They can't get over the big hump. So what do you think, fantasy-wise, Coach Bald of the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, you definitely nailed it with the big two, and that's CeeDee Lamb. If he's there and you're picking, after number 4 or 5 and he's there, I think you got to grab him. He's as dynamic as anybody. Nobody could cover him for the last couple games. And, like you said, Dak, during the regular season, he had about a 6-game stretch where he was arguably the best player in fantasy football last year. So I would definitely look for both of those two. You know, when you can get a tandem like that, when you can lock in a tandem, a number one with a big time quarterback like that, and they get hot, man, everything else just kind of falls into pieces. It's easier to pick your team when you got a quarterback you can play every week, when you got a wide receiver that can play every week. Another guy I think that has a lot of upside for them is Jake Ferguson, man, the big tight end out of Wisconsin, 6'5", 255 pounds. He gets open. He makes the catches. He's a guy I like a lot. But like you said, the next best guy after those two and those three, I would go with, Brandon Cooks, out of Oregon State. He's kind of a gadget guy, a guy that can line up in the slot and make some plays. As far as that running back position goes, it looks like it's kind of by committee by now. And I would think, if it's a goal line situation, that Zeke is going to be the guy, but he wouldn't be a guy I would start. He would maybe be a guy that might hit that flex position that I would play in the flex spot. But as far as defense goes, I mean, they got the sack machine, Micah Parsons, that right there. And then you got two pretty good corners, Tavon Diggs out of Alabama, and you got Deron Bland out of Fresno State. When you got two good corners like that, they can't attack the sidelines so much. They got to attack the middle of the field. And I think that's another part that makes the Cowboys tough, because you got Malik Hooker roaming around the middle of that defense there at the free safety spot out of Ohio State. One of the better free safeties in the league. And they got a couple good strong safeties there, Marquise Bell and Devon Wilson as well. Eric Kendricks is the middle linebacker. So yeah, man, I kind of agree with you. I think they're in a rough spot. I don't trust the coach. When you don't extend the coach and you don't extend the quarterback, they take it to heart, and they just don't play with the same fire and the passion. So I think the Cowboys, if they don't start fast and whip up on some teams early, I could see the wheels falling off of that thing really fast. But, like you said, as far as fantasy football, there's only three players on my radar. That's Dak, probably around the 10th round. I'll definitely be looking at Lamb in the first round. And, the tight end, probably, he's probably in that around that 10, 11 range when you look at tight ends as far as fantasy football goes. But where are we going to next, Coach, in that NFC East, the beast of the East? Who's it going to be?
Travis commented, I've always said that. Aaron Curtis says it will be silence of the lamb. LOL due to Dak's play. Travis says big tight end, go Bobcats. It will be the Eagles, because I don't think the Giants are worth talking about. Daniel Jones ain't worth putting in your fantasy. Well, they got Malik Neighbors. With what quarterback? I mean, is Daniel Jones going to distribute the ball? You lost Saquon Barkley. I mean, you got Brian Burns. I mean, you drafted okay, but I mean, let's be honest. Let's just be honest. The Giants, fantasy-wise, it ain't nothing to talk about. It ain't nothing to talk about when it comes to the Giants. I'm sorry. That's a waste of time. We're going to the Philadelphia Eagles because they are loaded. The Philadelphia Eagles are loaded. That's where WrestleMania 40 was held at. The greatest WrestleMania of all time. Thank you, Triple H, for making WWE a better product. We'll talk about that later. But the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts. You got Vic Fangio, defensive coordinator. You got Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. They just signed Jahan Dotson. They got A.J. Brown. They got Devontae Smith. They got Saquon Barkley. They lost their center. They got a solid defensive guy. I think they just signed somebody a couple of days ago. The Eagles are loaded, dude. They're loaded defensively, offensively. They are loaded. They'll easily win the NFC East. Look, Jalen Hurts. You signed Jahan Dotson. You got A.J. Brown. You got Saquon Barkley. You got Devontae Smith. I mean, you got a solid tight end. You got the Georgia guys on the defensive line. I mean, dude, that Eagles team is solid. Now, maybe we can go to the debate about Nick Sirianni. He don't really do much. True, not true, whatever y'all want to think of it. But the facts are the facts when it comes to us, and the man from Seoul said it best about Nick Sirianni. How did he get the job? So, at the end of the day, how do you feel about the Philadelphia Eagles? Bush Camp's son says go Bucks. Can y'all shout me out? Shout out to Bush Camp's sons. Bush Camp's son says, I am a huge fan. Unfriendly Potato says, so you think the Eagles going to win the Super Bowl? No, I don't think so. I think the 49ers will. Coach Ball, how do you feel about the Philadelphia Eagles? Because talented-wise on the roster, they are pretty heavily stacked.
Hey, man, you nailed it. You hit it on the head. You hit a home run. They are the Houston Texans of the NFC. And what I mean by that is they are a sexy fantasy football team when you look at the players they got. Jalen Hurts at quarterback. When you have that many weapons around you, you have to be considered a top 10 quarterback, maybe even top 5. Saquon Barkley. I could see Saquon Barkley being the top fantasy football running back at the end of the season if all pans out well. And when they get to that end zone, they don't do the tush push, or they have him in there doing it. They give him the rock. Dynamic. What a dynamic player out of Penn State. I think he's still got a lot of gas in the tank, 27 years old. The Eagles window, I think, is in the next 3 years too, just like we mentioned the Baltimore Ravens. Saquon Barkley, I could easily see him being a guy that could go first round. I would not be shocked if he didn't lead the league at the end of the season if he can stay healthy. And what makes him so important is because of the weapons they have. When you have an A.J. Brown, you have a Devontae Smith, you have a Jahan Dotson, and you have a Dallas Goedert, Dallas Goedert. When you got those guys, you cannot sit there and put a backup linebacker on any of those guys. You're going to have somebody that can cover, a lot of ground. And Barkley is a mismatch nightmare. All those guys I just named, Goedert, man, I could definitely see him having a big season. The big fella out of South Dakota State. A.J. Brown, he's probably going to be picked within the first 2 rounds. Devontae Smith, third-year receiver. Third-year receivers usually have huge breakout seasons. Hey, who knows? He could have a breakout season and be a guy that you're talking about getting a CD Lamb-sized contract next year. He's going to be a guy that really steps up. Jahan Dotson, man, that's a guy that can burn some speed. He's got some wheels on him. He's going into his second season. They just didn't get him the rock where he was at before. And I think Philly is going to have to they're going to have to do some scheming because A.J. Brown wants the ball. They're a team that if they don't start off super strong, I could see A.J. Brown blowing up on a Jalen Hurts as well, but I don't think that's going to happen. They've got a lot of veterans, up on that whole football team. I know they're going to miss Kelsey, but that offensive line has been one of the best offensive lines for several years. Lane Johnson is still there. He's a superstar, one of the best offensive linemen in the game right now. And I'm with you. I don't think there's a guy that, if he falls into your lap, if you've got A.J. Brown and you got the first pick of the next round, man, you scoop him up. I could see Smith going in the top 5 rounds. Definitely once you see all those, the big 4 quarterbacks, which in my opinion, that's going to be Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Joey Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Once you see those guys, I think you're going to have a battle through like a Jalen Hurts and your guy Herbert there with San Diego as to who to pick next. So that's my opinion on the Eagles. And, as far as that defense is too, last year they were just terrible in that secondary. And I think that's why you saw them, really hit that secondary hard, draft a couple guys, go with some free agency, and really want to dial in on that secondary because they were very poorish against the pass. And I think that's where you're going to see those guys really dial in. You're going to see those second-year players, Jordan Davis, you're going to say him, and you're going to see Jalen Carter step up and play big time here in their second year now that they have a whole year under their belt, a whole offseason of being an NFL player. So I look for the Eagles to have a big season, and they could be a team that gets to the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Erwin Curtis says Saquon Barkley. That might as well sign Charles Barkley. LOL, Saquon will have a decent numbers based on play. Unfriendly Potato says, yeah. Unfriendly Potato says, how about the Chiefs, bro? What are your thoughts on them? I think they're great and they're loaded with talent. I just don't think that they're going to do much. They're going to do what they normally do, but they're not going to win a third straight Super Bowl. I think the Chargers and the Bengals are the biggest threat. The next team in the NFC East, like I said, we got 16 more teams to go, is the Washington Commanders. They're starting the quarterback out of LSU, former Arizona State quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Now, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, he's probably up there to win Rookie of the Year. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe other guys in the wide receiver position that are rookies to win Rookie of the Year. I think when it comes to Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn is a defensive coach. I think, the only option that you did have was to start Jaden Daniels. You didn't have anybody else at quarterback. You got rid of, Sam Howell. I think he's with the Seattle Seahawks, if I'm correct. You got Jamison Crowder. You still got Terry McLaurin. You have to rebuild that defense. You got Austin Eckler. You got a former Chargers. You got Zach Ertz. Clinton Farrell, Emmanuel Forbes. You got solid corners. You got Javonte Jean-Baptiste on the defensive side as well. You got Marcus Mariota. So quarterback-wise, I'm not really picking him yet. Maybe Jaden Daniels, but your backup quarterbacks are Jeff Driscoll and Marcus Mariota. So I would do that. But Luke McCaffrey's a wide receiver as well. You got Jeremy Nichols at the running back spot too. You got Solid Garpa. You got Brian Pingle, former wide receiver as well. So I mean, we'll see how well they'll do. You also got Bobby Wagner, a former Seattle Seahawk. He played with Dan Quinn in the Legion of Boom. You know how that defense works. So, look, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to execution. They also have, they cut a couple guys as well. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're not picking too much from the Washington Commanders besides those guys that I've mentioned. But the Washington Commanders are rebuilding. You're playing in the NFC East. The Washington Commanders are allergic to beat the Dallas Cowboys, and they're allergic to beat the damn near Philadelphia Eagles. They're just allergic to that stuff. So they might beat up on the Giants this year. I'll give them credit for beating up on the Giants, but I gotta call out Troy Tim because he sat up there and said that what's it called? He sat up there and thought that Jaden Daniels is the next Randall Cunningham, which he is not the next Randall Cunningham. Like, let's just be honest. He ain't the next Randall Cunningham. So we'll see how well the Commanders will do. But I will win by $100 from the man from Seoul because he says the Washington Commanders will have a better record than my New England Patriots. So I'll easily win that $100. But we'll see how this goes when it comes to the Washington Commanders because they got solid guys that I mentioned, but how well are they going to execute? Because you're like I said, you can't beat the Cowboys or the Eagles. So how are you going to have a better record than New England Patriots? And then when you look at their schedule, like I said, the schedule does make the difference. I mean, it may be easy, it may be tough. Looking at the schedule for the Washington Commanders, like I said, week one for the Washington Commanders, week one,
yeah.
You're at Tampa
Right.
Bay. You're at Tampa Bay.
We'll be in the house too.
In the house, yes. You're at Tampa Bay week one. You got New York, at Cincinnati on Monday Night Football, at Arizona, at home against Cleveland, at Baltimore. home with Carolina and Chicago, at the Giants, against the Steelers. You're at the Eagles, at home against the Cowboys. Your bye week, like I said, you're going to get beat up. Your bye week isn't until week 14, like the Houston Texans. So you're playing 13 straight games, hoping that all your guys are going to be healthy, which is not the case in the NFL. Everybody gets banged up. But if you're playing an 18-game season with 18 weeks, you want your bye week at around like week 7, week 8, week 10. That's a sweet spot. You're playing 13 straight games, and you got a bye week at week 14. And then when you look at the last 4 games, you're at New Orleans, at home against Philadelphia, a tough Atlanta Falcons team with a stacked roster. And then, of course, you play the Dallas Cowboys. So you're allergic to beating those teams in your own division. So how do you feel about the Washington Commanders? Jared Goose says the Chargers may only win 5 games. Their weak wide receiver core, absence of the great running back, will cause them to have by far the worst offensive season in the NFL in the last 10 years. Urban Curry says the Washington Redskins. LOL says Dales needs a deeper wide receiver core. Coach Ball, how do you feel about the Washington Commanders?
Man, I feel a lot worse for him now that you mentioned that brutal start of a schedule. Holy cow, man. They are anti-Washington when it comes to the National Football League. Wow. Man, okay, so fantasy football-wise, Terry McLaurin, I think he could do something with this quarterback. They have a pretty solid offensive line. Hey, man, I'm telling you, Jaden Daniels, they are really hyping him up. Hopefully we see more C.J. Stroud out of him than we see Bryce Young. You know what I mean? He could be a guy that goes down quickly like AR5 with that type of a brutal schedule. Running back wise, Robinson Jr., I like him. Eckler, I think he's going to be more of a third down back. You're going to see them trying to bruise Robinson up the middle and then kind of weaken up that defense with Eckler out of the backfield. Little fire, little rain. Wide receiver wise, outside of McLaren, I mean, I'm not really impressed. Luke McCaffrey out of Rice, I don't really know. Tight end wise, Zach Ertz, he's good to learn from. And they picked the Kansas State kid, Ben Sinnott. They picked him pretty early, pretty athletic guy. So he would be a guy that would kind of maybe be on my, you just watch my watch list. But as far as drafting people, maybe McLaren, and I'm thinking 7th, 8th round. Jaden Daniels, I'm not picking Jaden Daniels to be my starting quarterback. I'm picking him to be my backup quarterback. As far as defense, I always thought these guys would be great, picking Jonathan Allen out of Alabama, Daron Payne out of Alabama. They had all these guys from Alabama on that defensive line. Well, maybe they got their butts kicked at Alabama, and playing those tough schedules and playing against those tough offensive lines, the 4 years that they were there. I definitely am not picking their defense to, be on my fantasy football team as well. So, yeah, man, a lot of red flags on that Washington football team, especially since you just named the schedule. Had I not looked at that schedule, I would have felt a lot more strong about picking some of those guys. But, man, after you named that beginning schedule and they don't have a bye week till, 13, 14?
14.
No, thank you. No, thank you. And, yeah, it is not going to be pretty when you guys come to Tampa. Tampa's pretty loaded on both sides of the ball. And like I said, it's a huge home field advantage when you come here, and it's a 425 start, and it's a 120-degree heat index when you step on that field.
Next team is the Chicago Bears. We're in the NFC North. We are almost done. Jared Goose says, I'd rather have Ben Simmons as a wide receiver than Kadarius Toney. The Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams, they got Keenan Allen. They HBO Hard Knocks, the Chicago Bears, Soldier Field. Matt Eberflus probably should have gotten fired, but he has one more year under his belt. You got DJ Moore, who is a great wide receiver. He just got paid a couple weeks ago. How do you feel about the Bears? Should you sign anybody? Would you draft anybody in 2024 fantasy football from the Chicago Bears besides DJ Moore, Caleb Williams, and Keenan Allen? Maybe not Keenan Allen because he's an older wide receiver and he just got off an injury, but how do you feel about the Chicago Bears? They got a loaded defense. Defense has never been the issue. The issue has been their offense. So how do you feel about the Chicago Bears in 2024 fantasy football?
Well, I think they upgraded big time this offseason, and it starts with Caleb Williams, the quarterback. He's not going to be a guy that I pick as my starting quarterback, but he would definitely be a guy I would pick as a backup just to see what he does. Athletic, very live arm. In preseason, that first preseason game, he made a couple throws there that were really eye-opener. DeAndre Swift, I like him in the backfield. He had a few seasons where he was in Detroit, didn't do much, went to Philly, had a couple big games there in Philly. I think he's still got a lot of gas in the tank. 4-year, this will be his 4th year. 5'9", 215 out of the University of Georgia. I like them Georgia running backs. Those guys that went to Georgia, they kind of do it by committee there, so they still got a lot of wear and tear, if you will. As far as wide receivers, man, DJ Moore, he was a guy that when they got him the ball, he made some big plays. Well, they got a better quarterback getting him the ball. He's definitely a guy I could see having a big impact. I could see getting him in the 5th round. He'd be definitely a guy that I would kind of have the bullseye on, thinking he's going to lead their receiving core until Adunez, makes a couple of big plays, shows a couple of games. He's a guy that I would maybe pick 2nd to last round, 3rd to last round, maybe keep an eye on the watch list. Okay. The watch list is very key when it comes to fantasy football. It's basically players that don't get drafted that you want to see what they do. So keep him on the watch list. As far as tight end, I'm not hearing a lot. They had the big fella out of Notre Dame, but I haven't been hearing much good stuff about him in the offseason. Also, Gerald Everett out of South Alabama, 6'3", 250. I wouldn't draft either one of those guys. As far as that defense, they are loaded on the defensive side of the ball, but a lot has to go. I want to see that offense do good before I would pick up that defense. Tremaine Edwards from the Virginia Tech Hokies. He's a guy that's kind of the Mike linebacker. He's a freak, man. 6'5", 250 pounds, manning that middle linebacker spot, and he can run with every tight end and running back. You're talking about a 6'4", 250-pound freak that runs a 4.4 40 that plays Mike linebacker. Former Virginia Tech Hokie. I like him on that defense. But that's kind of how I'm feeling about the Chicago Bears. I wouldn't draft anybody but Moore. Moore would be a guy I would look at, legitimate. And then Swift, maybe in the later rounds, you're talking about after the 8th, 9th round, I'd take a look at him. And then, after you draft your starting quarterback, if Caleb Williams is there late and you have 2 picks left, you haven't picked a backup quarterback, I think he'd be a good, safe pick there from the University of USC. 6'1", 214. Number 1 pick, man. Number 1 pick. But, Lando, I just give a shout out, man. I appreciate you guys watching. Bold is Alex. Erwin, man, you're bringing all the good stuff, man. We really appreciate it.
Dunze all day. Gator says, yes, indeed, Coach Ball. It's a whole different ball game when anyone comes to play in Florida, especially the South. Jared Goof says, as a Lions fan, the Bears win the NFC North by a game, going 12-5. Lions win 11-6. Packers go 9-8. The Vikings only win 4 games unless they sign Ryan Tannehill. Then they'll win 7 games. Oh my God. On to the next one. On to the next one. On to the next one because we're almost done. We're gonna wrap this up pretty soon because We got football practice. I got a coach practice in an hour. And we got some college football games that we can't miss. North Dakota State, Colorado tonight. You got Rutgers and Harvard tonight. And then you got Minnesota and North Carolina. So we're trying to finish this up as quick as possible. But Total Bowl Nation, we love you and appreciate you. Next team in NFC North, 10 more teams to go. The Detroit Lions. The money-making guy from Detroit. Where is he at? The Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, Ford Field, Eminem, Marshall Mathers, The Death of Slim Shady, the album that came out in June. The best. Erwin says, thanks, guys, for recognizing your viewers. We are Total Pole Nation, faith, family, football, and the future of consecration. We believe that y'all be big-time live streamers. We believe that you be big-time YouTubers. We believe that you be big-time content creators. And for members and subscribers to Total Pole Nation, we will help you achieve your dreams. We help others, we change lives, and we build champions. And the Lombardi Trophy goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they beat the Kansas City Chiefs in 2020 by the score of 31-9. Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. How do you feel, Coach Ball? You have somebody from Detroit, the money-making guy about the Lions. I'm going to let you hop on this topic. How do you feel about the Detroit Lions? What are you going to do in fantasy? Because you got Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Reynolds. You got a lot of guys. How do you feel about the Detroit Lions?
Hey, man, St. Brown is that dude. St. Brown is going to be the guy, in my opinion. You know, he's going to be Tyreek Hill-ish season. He's going to have a freakish season. You definitely want him. If he's sitting there after 6 or 7, he's going to be a steal. He could, at the end of the season, be that guy that takes you to the championship. Jameson Williams. Take a shot with me of Jameson Williams. I like him out of University of Alabama going into his second year. I think he's a big reason why they were able to let some receivers go, because they believe in him. He's going to be healthy. As far as the running back spot, Gibbs, I think, might have had a slight injury in preseason. But if you can get either one of these guys, if you can get David Montgomery and Gibbs, I'm telling you, you get them. If you get to where you can pick them back to back, you might even start both of those guys each week, because they're a great flex play. One of them is going to get big time points, but I had both of them in the season last year. Both of them were getting you over 10 points every single week. Jared Goff is going to be a sneaky play too, because when you have all those weapons around him, somebody's got to get him the ball. And the guy we haven't mentioned yet might be the best tight end in the league. Yes, the star from the University of Iowa. He'll be going into his second season. Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is a monster. He is unguardable down there in that red zone, especially when you can't cheat, because you got studs in the backfield, studs on each end, studs in the slot. He's going to be a guy, he might be the next Travis Kelce. All right, Sam Laporta is a stud. And I'll tell you what, they were the best football team in the National Conference for 3 downs. For 3 downs. If Dan Campbell doesn't, no risk it, no biscuit on 4th down, there's no way those guys don't punch their ticket to the Super Bowl. I love what they got up front. You know, you got Sewell, man, what a offensive lineman. They locked him up for a long time. They got Ragnow, the center, stud out of Arkansas. On the other side, Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson going into his second year. He's going to have that Bosa-type impact this upcoming season. You got the big fella DJ Reader out of Clemson clogging up that middle. I love their middle linebackers as well, man. This is a team that I think is going to be the team to beat and could be in that NFC Championship this season as well. I know you like the Niners, but I'm loving Detroit right now, my brother. What do you got? Who do you think's next?
Jared Goof says, hot take, the Arkansas Razorbacks make the college football playoff. I don't know about that. Gator says, Total Pole Nation is taking over the football nation. Erwin Curtis says the Motor City Kittles. LOL, biting kneecaps and toppling teams that are favored over them. Jared Goose says Sam Laporta pulls up 15 TDs this season. I don't know about 15. That's kind of 15 is crazy. Next team, we got 9 more teams to go. The Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love is the highest tied as the highest paid quarterback. You got Christian Watkins. AJ Dillon is out, so that hurts them a lot. He's out for the year with a broken neck. So who do you? I mean, they got a solid wide receiver core, a solid tight end. Their defense is very great and efficient. I'm not gonna take Jordan Love in fantasy. I don't know yet. I can't take Jordan Love in fantasy as a starter. I will take him in fantasy, but not as a starter. Christian Watkins, great wide receiver. They got some other guys in the wide receiver spot. I can't remember their names right now, but Coach Ball will get to them in a second. They got a solid defense. They got Jair Alexander at the quarterback spot. I mean, man, that man's a dog. I mean, dude, the Green Bay Packers and Matt LaFleur, I mean, it looked like he was on a hot seat last year, starting at 3-6, but then they found their way to making it to the NFC divisional round. If they made a couple plays they should have made, they would have beat the 49ers and been in the NFC Championship game with the Detroit Lions. Coach Bald, how do you feel about Lambeau Field, the team up north, the Cheeseheads? Jordan Love got his money after playing for 1 year. Are you picking Jordan Love in fantasy football?
Yeah, man, I love what the Green Bay Packers have done, man. The way they draft, they're just consistent. They're the youngest team in pro football. I want to say they average 26 and a half, 27 years old. And, man, all their players are in that 25-year-old range. I mean, these guys are just – they haven't even got close to what they're peaking. These guys are going to be good for the next 5-6 years. And I'll tell you what, the bell cow that they got in the offseason, I think was one of the most underrated picks, was getting Josh Jacobs from the Raiders, the University of Alabama, 5'10", 220, playmaker. And when I say playmaker, he's just as dangerous on a handoff or a jet sweep than he is getting the ball on a screen play, or, you know, you can put him out. You can, you know, put him in motion, have him run a little out. There's not a linebacker in the league that can cover that guy, man. I think them getting him puts them in double-digit victories. All right, that guy is a monster. Look for Jacobs. He could be a guy, too, at the end of the season that's in that top 5 point-wise, and he's a point per the PPR leagues. He's a monster. He's going to get at least 5-6 catches per game. You know, as far as the receiving core, you got Romeo Doubs out of Nevada. You've got Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. And then you have Christian Watson, the big wide receiver. I thought he was out of Florida State, but he's the one out of all of them that I like the most. You got Dontavion Wicks out of Virginia. He's another guy. Bo Melton out of Rutgers. All these guys, 24, 23, 25, you know, young guys. But Watson, I think, has the most upside to stretch the field. He could have a monster season for these guys. At tight end, you got 2 young tight ends. You got Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State, 6'6", 250. And then you got Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State, 6'5", 250. They're going to be a good football team. I don't know which player steps up and is like that guy. I think Jacobs is the only one that you take a flyer on. If he's sitting there in that second round, you don't know who to pick. Man, pull the trigger on him. I'm not big on taking running backs early, but he's going to have an impact where he could easily have over, I would say he could have 1,200 yards rushing, 500 yards receiving. You know, he could have some serious yards. He could have a huge season for them. And I think they lean on him to help Jordan Love, to take the leads, to end these games. Defensive-wise, man, they're loaded. You know, a lot of young talent. You got Kenny Clark on that D-line, Xavier McKinney from Alabama, Rashawn Gray, from Michigan. Just a lot of young talent on this team. And it's easy to fall in love with the Green Bay Packers with what they're bringing. Fantasy football, yeah, Jordan Love, but definitely Jordan Love would be a guy I would maybe take as a starting quarterback. I think he's going to get top 10 by the end of the season. All those receivers I think are sneaky plays, but Josh Jacobs I think could be a bell cow for them and get you some big time points and help you win your fantasy football league. Who do we got next? Are we going to Minnesota? Coach?
We might go to AFC South, Coach Ball, because like I said, you got J.J. McCarthy goes down, and you got Sam Darnold. It's not much else to talk about besides Justin Jefferson. I mean, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, he's a top 10.
We'll go to NFC South. NFC South. Erwin Curtis says cheese heads don't smell. LOL. Love is a solid fantasy pick. They embarrassed the Dallas Cowgirls. Jared Goose said Jordan Love will be sacked at least 40 times. Erwin Curtis says, what, Jared? Love won't even get his jersey dirty. He is Rodgers 2.0. We appreciate you the comments here at Total Poll Nation. We got 7 more teams to go. The Atlanta Falcons have a loaded roster. Kirk Cousins, great regular season quarterback, but in the postseason, he's allergic to prosperity, and in primetime games, he fails. You got Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. You got Matthew Judon from a trade for the Patriots. You got a very loaded roster. That roster is loaded. Quinn Lombardi says Saquon or Jonathan Taylor. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Love from Russia. So, Coach Bald, how do you feel about the Atlanta Falcons? They week 1 against the Steelers at home. I think they possibly compete with the South with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How do you feel about that? Because their roster is loaded defensively and offensively, and Raheem Morris gets a second chance of opportunity to be a head coach again.
Yeah, without a doubt, you nailed it. They are loaded. They are a loaded roster. I think early is when you want to play them because Cousins still kind of coming off injury. I think you see them dinking and dunking a lot more than going deep. I think Bijan Robinson, man, I think he's going to have a monster season. I don't think they used him properly last year. I could see Tyler Aguilar. I could see him stealing a lot of goal lines from him as well, the big back out of University of BYU. Keep those two on your radar, but I definitely Robinson, he could definitely be a guy you pick in the top 2 rounds. Wide receiver wise, Drake London. He's the guy from USC going into his second year. Big receiver, 6'4", 213, USC. He's going to be a stud. He's going to be a mismatch nightmare. But when you talk about mismatch nightmares, you got to talk about the big fella, the Gator, Florida Gator, the big man, Kyle Pitts, 6'6", 250. Runs a 4.40. 40. Finally, he's got somebody to throw him the rock. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what Atlanta does with all that talent, all the free agents they recently picked up. The big trade for Judon from you guys. They just picked up Justin Simmons. They are a team that looks like they're going all in. And the future, if you have one of these drafts where you can get guys for the future, keeper leagues, man, Michael Penix Jr., I believe he's going to be special. He's a Tampa kid playing there in Atlanta, played in the Natty last year for the University of Washington. But, yeah, man, that's where I see Atlanta. And it's going to be a battle, I think, all year. It's going to come down to Atlanta and Tampa. That's my opinion, Coach.
All right, so the next team, we got the Panthers and the Saints. Are they worth talking about in fantasy? The Panthers and the Saints?
Yeah, I'm gonna say we can go into the Saints for a little bit, but yeah, I wouldn't with the Panthers.
Yeah, we'll go to the Saints. So how do you feel about the Saints? You fired the offensive coordinator. Dennis Allen is on the hot seat. He's a very solid defensive coach. They got Joe Woods as the defensive coordinator. They got Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. I mean, how do you feel about the Saints? They got Tyrann Mathieu. They got Cam Jordan. He's a lot older. But, I mean, what do you expect to see from the Saints? I mean, because, the NFC South is the weakest division in all of football. So, Are you expecting to see anything new with Derek Carr and that new offense? And then Michael Thomas has been the same since that foot injury. Alvin Kamara has been in and out with a suspension and hamstring. Tyrann Matthew is an older player. And then Cam Jordan is an older player as well. So how do you feel about the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, I think they're going to be a team that, 6-7 victories. They're going to be in a lot of games. They do got some talented guys. They got Demario Davis, Lattimore in that secondary. And like you said, Tyrann from LSU, but he's getting a little long in the tooth, and a lot of their players are fantasy value. I think you have Kamara could be a guy that 9th, 10th round if he's there. You don't want to reach on these guys because health is wealth, man, especially with fantasy football. Chris Olave, he's probably the guy I like the most. Honestly, he'd be a guy that I would pick, in the top 4 rounds. And I'll tell you what, if you can get him at a tight end, a backup tight end spot, they always do something with Taysom Hill. They might line him up at quarterback or running back, and he can get some sneaky points, but you can't count on sneakiness to win you any championships. He's a guy that you might pick last round, or like I said, you have those guys that you can kind of keep an eye on in your watch list. Keep Taysom Hill on your watch list. Jawan Johnson, he's same deal. He's a tight end, but he can stretch the field pretty well. Carr, I don't know. I'm not going to be trying to win any games with him at my quarterback. So he's not a guy I would be thinking about drafting either. But that's who we got. Who we got next? Yeah, I would. Carolina. Yep.
Your team. We got 4 more teams to go, but your team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They returned Baker Mayfield. He got a 3-year, $100 million extension. You still got Chris Godwin. You still got Mike Evans. That's a very solid team. Baker Mayfield in fantasy, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, one of your fantasy guys. Solid tight end as well. So how do you feel about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I think they have some competition in the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons. I think the Panthers and Saints are going to be out the question. How do you feel about your team, Tampa Bay, Florida, Raymond James Stadium? How do you feel about those Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah, they had a great offseason. They're not a team that gets a lot of hype. You got a lot of East Coast bias, but Antoine Winfield is probably the best safety in the league. Left tackle wise, I know everybody wants to get on the guy for the 49ers and get on this other guy, but Tristan Wirfs is the best left tackle in the league. He's in his 4th year out of Iowa. Best left tackle in the game. Was a wrestler. They got some studs on both sides, man. I love Vita Vea. Probably your best zero technique. You put him over top of the center and get ready to get mauled. He's been one of the best in the league since he's been in the league. Teams cannot run the ball on them. Levante David, the guy's been there forever. All he does is make plays, make tackles. Receiving core, Mike Evans. Big play Mike. Chris Godwin, in my opinion, have been the best receiving core for the last couple of years because they block. They block. You know what I mean? They're big, both of them. Mike Williams, 6'5", 230. Chris Godwin, 6'1", 210. Now they just drafted a guy, Jalen McMillan, out of Washington. He's another guy that can help stretch the field. But the guy I think it helps the most, Rashad White, the running back out of Arizona State, 6 foot 214. The guy's got a set of hands on him. Another guy to keep an eye on, Bucky Irvin, is a guy that they drafted, a little scat back out of Oregon, 5'10", 195 pounds. Keep him on your watch list as well. But I think you're going to have a huge season from Rashad White. You love the PPR or half a point per reception leagues. Man, he's going to get some touches. Baker Mayfield, I believe, can be a top 10, top 12 quarterback just because of what he has at his exposure, man. I mean, when you got guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and now you got McMillan there in the slot, they're going to be a tough team to key in on. And Baker, too, can take off and, he'll dive for that 1 yard, or he'll jump up in somebody's chest. And it just gets the whole team easy to rally around. So those are the guys I would keep an eye on. The player I like the most out of all of them is the running back, Rachaad White. But Evans, I don't know. He needs to have another 1,000-yard season and 10 touchdowns. And I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't do that. Definitely a guy, if you're in the 7th, 8th round, he's there. Get him. Godwin, if he's sitting there, last couple rounds, take a flyer on him. But that's it. Their defense, I think, too, could be a top 10 defense. But that's probably some Homer talking as well, man. They ain't going to win the Super Bowl.
Three more teams, because I don't think the Arizona Cardinals are worth talking about with Kyler Murray coming back from injury. Jonathan Gibbs, dude, they were just bad. I mean, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably part of your fantasy. They ain't nothing to talk about. So we got lots of comments. So Gator says, if you're new here, thanks for joining us. Double tap the screen to show us love on YouTube. Eric Curry says, Jerry, maybe you should put on some Coke bottle glasses and go back and watch Love versus the Cowgirls. LOL. Love is not a Hall of Famer yet, but he did play just like Aaron Rodgers. Erwin Curtis says, Dirty Birds have internal QB controversy, which will probably drag down their fantasy numbers. Jared Goose said it was a good game, but come on, the Cowboys always sell in the playoffs. They are like the 76ers of the NFL, of the NBA. Erwin Curtis says the Golden Grill is dragging Kamara's numbers down. LOL. Ain't no fantasy picks. LOL. Erwin Curtis says Baker's dozen injuries could sink the pirate ship. LOL. Next team is the Rams. Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. Look, they got a lot of talent. Defensively, you're not picking anybody on fantasy because you just lost Aaron Donald. You lost the greatest defensive player in all of the NFL. He retired. So, if you're picking Rams fantasy, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, you got, I think, Blake Corum at running back, if I'm correct. I think Blake Corum got drafted, and you got somebody else along the running back spot as well. So, and maybe their tight end. I think Tyler Higbee, if he's still on the team. So how do you feel about the Los Angeles Rams? They're going to be a playoff team, but the NFC West is going to be very stacked. The NFC West comes out to the Rams, 49ers, and the Seattle Seahawks. So how do you feel about the Los Angeles Rams?
Yeah, when you talk fantasy football, you want to keep a lot of these guys in the bullseye on your watch list, draft them, because they lost a huge piece of that puzzle on defense, which means they're going to have to outscore some teams. And, yeah, man, probably the biggest stud on that offense was Kieran Williams, man, out of Notre Dame, the 5'9", 195-pounder. I mean, what a great season he ended up having last year. Matt Stafford, the only quarterback in the National Football Conference in the NFC to have a Super Bowl ring and won a Super Bowl with those Rams. So he might be the best quarterback in that conference still. It's all going to depend on if he can stay healthy. I love Kieran Williams, without a doubt. He would definitely be a guy that I would target second to third round. When you draft a running back in that type of a round, you may want to get a handcuff. And what a handcuff is basically your number one running back goes down. Who's going to be that backup? When you have a guy like Blake Corum, when you draft him with your last pick, if something happens to Williams, he's still going to be the one that comes in there and gets the football. And when you have an explosive offense like this, you want a running back on an explosive offense because he's going to get some touches. He's going to be a dual threat guy out of the backfield catching passes. Nacua came out of nowhere last year. Who saw that? I just see him having a better season. Hopefully Kupp can stay healthy. As far as Higbee, I believe he might be on the injured list. So he's going to miss the first 4 games. So I think the guy you're looking for at tight end is Kobe Parkinson, who is a giant 6'7", 250-pound man out of University of Stanford. But he's not a guy you're drafting. He's just a guy on the watch list. And as far as the defense, I'm not going to be picking anybody on that defense for sure. Who we got next? We headed to Seattle.
Two more teams. The 49ers. The 49ers. Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, Levi Stadium, Christian McCaffrey on the cover of EA Sports Electronic Arts Madden NFL 25. The 49ers. The 49ers. Jared Goff says Kobe Turner is a beast. Aaron Curtis says the LA Shams. LOL. Matt Staff infection is done. LOL. Stafford's is junk. He can't throw a loaf of bread to the kid in a grocery store. LOL. Stafford is not bad. Gator says good catching up with y'all, Coach Ball and Coach Lambo. I am out. We appreciate y'all here at Total Pole Nation. We're almost done. We only got two teams. The San Francisco 49ers. They are my Super Bowl pick. They will make the Super Bowl. They will. Brock Purdy, great fantasy numbers. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. He hasn't practiced. I understand. He hasn't practiced. History explained source to the Houston Texans Super Bowl champs. They ain't winning no damn Super Bowl. You better stop that nonsense right now. They ain't winning no Super Bowl. But a lot of talent. Christian McCaffrey. You got another backup running back as well. At the end of the day, they got a solid defense. They lost multiple defensive coordinators. I'll pick the 49ers defense on fantasy. Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I think Jennings is still on that roster. You got George Kittle as well. They also drafted Ricky Parcell, I think the guy out of Florida Gators, in the first round, I think number 32. So how do you feel about the 49ers? I think they will go back to the Super Bowl. They got unfinished business. Their window is closing a lot faster than other teams because they've been there multiple times. But Kyle Shanahan can't win the big one. History explains short says LML. History explains short says we watched this in February. I don't need to rewatch it. I predict the future of the NFL. So Jared Goose says the Bucks have a higher chance of winning the Super Bowl than the 49ers. No, the fuck they don't. But go ahead, Coach Ball.
Wow. Man, it'd be great. It would be great if that was the case. But still, my number one pick in fantasy football, if I get the number one pick, I'm going Christian McCaffrey. It's just how it's going to be. You know, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And that guy's been the man back to back.
Yes.
I think the 49ers are going to have to score more points. I think they lost a few defensive linemen last season, so that kind of worries me. But what they did drafting-wise, that kind of made sense to me, you know. I have a little – I don't know, with Ayuk, I feel like there needs to be a little caution sign around him because he wants to practice, then he doesn't, then he walks off. Like, I hate that kind of drama before I'm about to do my fantasy football draft. Brock Purdy, I think he's a guy that's going to be a top 10 quarterback this year. If he was to go down, I love Josh Dobbs as a backup. So if you draft Brock Purdy, put Josh Dobbs on your watch list. Another guy to keep on your watch list is Isaac Guerrero, or he's the backup running back, rookie out of Louisville. I think Elijah Mitchell has been hurt, so he won't be available for a while. So you want to have, if you draft McCaffrey, you want to have his backup in every league, especially when you're drafting him at that position. Wide receiver wise, I mean, if Ayuk was all in, I would feel a lot better. I would caution him. I definitely think he's a top 10 receiver. Deebo Samuel switching to number 1. Man, he looks fresh in that jersey, and he is jacked. I love some Deebo Samuel. I think he's going to have a big season. A guy I don't draft, I maybe have him sitting around my 30th best receiver available. Ricky Pearsall, I like him out of Florida. You know, who knows if Ayuk was to get traded, I think Pearsall could have some good value to him. Kittle is definitely a top tier tight end, one you would definitely draft. The defense is going to be good, but I don't think they'll be as good as last season. I think the offense is going to step up, and I think Purdy is going to be the guy that does it for them. All right, Coach, last one.
The Seattle Seahawks, they got a new coach in Mac McDonald. Geno Smith is still on the team. They still got DK Metcalf. They got Sam Howell. Look, Geno Smith will probably be not fantasy pickable. He's great. But the Seattle Seahawks, you got a retirement of Pete Carroll. So they're going to have a different look. Now, defensively, you could probably pick them because their defense is going to be fast and quick. Mac McDonald had a great solid defense when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. But, I mean, I wouldn't pick anybody else besides DK Metcalf. I mean, who else do they have, Coach Ball, for the Seattle Seahawks? Are you picking any Seattle Seahawks players? DK Metcalf probably could be a late-round pick because you got so many other wide receivers on that list that we talked about with 31 other teams. But how do you feel about the Seattle Seahawks in the 12th man? Because they got to rebuild. Pete Carroll is retired. So how do you feel about the Seattle Seahawks in the 12th man?
Yeah, I think you're going to see this be a division that, there's going to have to be a lot more offense than defense. They, losing Carroll, he's a defensive-minded coach, and he had him in a lot of games. I think with the new coaching staff and the players that they have, they're going to have to score some points. And I think they could be a team that has some good studs, undervalued guys. Geno Smith. He's got to be healthy. I know he took a punishment last year. I think he played hurt most of the season, and they didn't have that great of a season. Kenneth Walker, I think he's an explosive player. He had a little bit of injury, but he would be a guy I would definitely take a hard look, especially after you've got your number one running back, and you've already got your 3 starting receivers. He'd be a guy I would look to be your second running back, 3rd flex position possibly. And that wide receiver position, Lockett, he's just not a guy I'm going to draft. DK, he's definitely their best receiver, can make big plays going into his 5th season. The wide receiver from Ohio State going into his 2nd season, Jackson Smith. I don't know how you say that last name. Najee. Yep. He's going to be a guy that I would definitely have on the radar, have on the watch list. Tight end wise, I don't trust any of these guys. Maybe Noah Fant, kind of have him on your watch list, but that's about it. I don't have this defense, being one of the better defenses in the league. They have a couple players in the secondary, but yeah, nothing stands out that makes me say, ooh, the Seattle Seahawks are definitely going to the playoffs this season. Nope.
All right, this is it.
Hey, man, let's go ahead and wrap that up. I know you got to go, and we can do the rest next time.
Total Pole Nation, we love you. We thank you. We appreciate you. Faith, family, football, and the future of content creation. We help others, we change lives, and we build champions. Today's video is sponsored by St. Pete Rejuvenate, Coach Ball, St. Pete Rejuvenate of Tom Brady. Tell us about what programs and what services we can provide at St. Pete Rejuvenate.
Absolutely. Health is wealth with St. Pete Rejuvenate. We do the ketamine infusions there. If you're suffering from chronic pain or you're having anxiety problems, depression is a silent killer. Give us a call. We'll let you know what we can do for you. The IV hydration therapy is so clutch this time of year, especially with football season. You'll hear about some of these athletes doing IV hydration therapy. You don't have to be an athlete just to do it, okay? It'll help you get all the vitamins that you need on a daily basis, weekly basis. We have people that come in once a month just to get the IV hydration therapy to feel better. If you start feeling COVID-like symptoms, give us a phone call. St. Pete Rejuvenate, stpeterejuvenate.com. Check us out. And guys, to the next episode. Thank you, Lambo. You've been phenomenal. Love you, Total Pole Nation. To the next episode.
Let's go, Total Pole.
Totem pole, 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 totem pole.